The ocean surrounding Earth is real, but it is not made of water, and it does not shimmer under any light. It has no surface, no waves, no sound, and yet every moment of your life has unfolded within it, as quietly as a breath dissolving into the night. People look at the sky and imagine emptiness, a cold vacuum stretching outward forever. But what you see as emptiness is a sea that does not reveal itself, a sea that has carried our planet since long before the first stone cooled on Earth's surface. Tonight, let me show you the ocean no one notices, the one that holds the shape of the universe together. You're listening to Whispers of the Universe, and if you're gentle enough to leave a quiet sign of kindness, a like, a share, or a soft subscription, it helps this small sanctuary stay awake in the dark. Now, breathe slowly and imagine yourself floating above Earth. Below, the thin glow of the atmosphere. Beyond, a vast black floor that looks utterly empty until you listen differently. Because that darkness is not empty at all. It is thick with something that has no color, no charge, no reflection, something moving through every inch of space like a silent tide. Dark matter, a name we gave to something we cannot touch, cannot see, cannot bottle, but can feel through its gravity. It surrounds the Milky Way in a vast halo, stretching far beyond the outermost stars. And the sun, with all its planets clinging to it, is not resting inside that halo. It is slicing through it, 220 kilometers every second, like a small glowing ship carving its way through a black ocean whose currents never slow, never settle, never sleep. This is the first truth almost no one considers. Earth is drifting. Not drifting casually, but drifting through a stream of matter that flows through us at all times, even now. Every second, tens of trillions of dark matter particles pass through your body without leaving a trace. They cross the walls of your home, the crust of the planet, the core of the sun, as easily as starlight crosses the void. And still, we know they are there not because we see them, but because galaxies refuse to fall apart. That is the quiet miracle. The universe holds together because of a sea no one can see. As the sun moves, it creates a current, a wind. Though the word is imperfect, it is not a wind you can hear or feel, but a drift of invisible momentum washing past Earth from one direction of the galaxy. Imagine a breeze that does not stir air, a tide that does not touch skin, a flow that does not disturb dust. It is there regardless, shaping the orbits of stars, guiding the formation of galaxies, bending the paths of light itself. And here is the point where the story turns stranger. We are not simply moving through this ocean. The ocean itself is moving around us. It shifts, it thickens, it thins, it pools in places we cannot map, creating slow, massive currents that stretch across thousands of light years. Some regions of the halo are smooth, others turbulent. Some flow like warm layers beneath the surface of a midnight sea. Others churn like deep water touched by ancient storms. This is the first mini-climax of the story. We are drifting inside a medium that is not static. It breathes, it changes density, it changes direction, and sometimes it changes us. Because as Earth travels around the sun and the sun circles the galaxy, the speed and angle of the dark matter wind shift in subtle annual rhythms, a cosmic tide chart that no one ever taught us to read. Once a year, the wind strengthens. Once a year, it softens. These faint modulations are so delicate that only the most sensitive detectors on Earth can feel them. Devices buried deep underground, surrounded by thick walls of rock, waiting in perfect stillness for a single particle to nudge them gently. X Enon, 1T, LZ, Gamma, Libra. Names whispered in physics labs, where silence is not a preference but a requirement. These instruments are our ears pressed against the hull of a ship, listening for waves that do not break. Sometimes, They hear something. Sometimes they hear nothing. And that is part of the mystery, a mystery that has persisted for decades. If this ocean is everywhere, if it is flowing through every star and every atom, why does it remain so hard to touch? The answer, perhaps, lies in the nature of the sea itself. It is not a stormy one. It is calm, calm to the point of invisibility. A sea not made of particles darting about wildly, but of something colder, quieter, more orderly than anything we have ever known. It wraps the galaxy in a slow, gentle embrace. It carries us the way deep water carries a drifting leaf, without splash, without resistance, without warning. And yet, if an ocean exists, then so do its tides, so do its currents, so do its hidden flows, coiling and uncoiling across distances far beyond imagination. Earth is drifting, but the sea around it is drifting too. And that simple truth is what leads us into the next question, the one waiting just beyond this breath. If the dark ocean has tides, what happens when we sail into one? That is where we continue, in the next part of the journey. And if the dark ocean has tides, then those tides must leave traces, even if our eyes were never meant to see them. Not lines on a shore, not foam on a surface, but something quieter, patterns of motion, subtle shifts in density, faint variations in a sea of matter that does not glow. Those invisible ripples are the first hints that the darkness around us is not still. It breathes, just slowly enough for an entire civilization to mistake the movement for silence. Imagine drifting in that silence for a moment. You're looking down at Earth from far above, the world turning beneath you in its slow blue rotation. Across the planet, night is sliding over continents. Like an enormous shadowed curtain, clouds bloom and dissolve. Rivers gleam where the moon catches them. And beneath all of that, beneath water, beneath stone, beneath molten iron, dark matter passes through the entire planet without slowing down. But tonight, we're not watching Earth. We're watching the space around it. If you soften your view, if you imagine the blackness not as a void but as a medium, a kind of unseen water, you begin to feel something you could never perceive with your body. A drift, a push, a constant pressure from one direction of the galaxy, like a current pressing against the hull of a ship. This is the dark matter wind. It isn't a wind in the ordinary sense. There is no rush of molecules, no vibration of air. It is simply the result of motion. The sun travels through the Milky Way, and because of that motion, dark matter seems to flow past us. The same way a passenger on a boat feels the wind, even on a perfectly calm day, simply because the boat is moving. The Earth, clinging to the sun's gravitational pull, is a passenger in this cosmic vessel. And the invisible ripples brushing against us are the faint impressions of a current that stretches across nearly 100,000 light years. That's the scale of the Milky Way's dark matter halo. Vast, round, thick, embracing the galaxy like a cocoon of unlit weight. We live deep inside it, closer to the glowing spiral arms than to its outer edges. But even here, even in this mid-layer of the halo, the currents are strong. The sun cuts through this sea at around 130 miles every second. Earth adds its own small motion as it orbits the Sunday. The result is a shifting, layered pattern of dark matter flow, a complicated vector of motion that shifts across the seasons, across centuries, across the slow turning of the galaxy itself. We never feel it. We never hear it. But it is always there, moving through us, moving through everything we've ever known. Some nights, I like to imagine what it would be like if human senses were tuned differently, if we could feel gravitational pressure the way we feel wind on our skin. If the passing of trillions of invisible particles per second could tug gently on our bones or pull faintly on the hair of our arms, would the night feel alive? Would we become aware that the darkness itself has texture? Most of the time, we live with the illusion that space is empty. We think the stars shine alone, suspended in nothingness. But the stars are not alone. They swim through the same ocean we do, enveloped in the same dark mass that shapes their orbits and prevents galaxies from tearing themselves apart. Even the sun, bright and defiant, bows to the structure of this sea. And here, in this vast darkness, something remarkable begins to take shape. A realization, slow, gradual, like a tide, rising in the mind that the dark matter wind is not random. It has direction, it has rhythm, it has cycles. Every year, Earth passes through thicker and thinner regions of the invisible current. As we move around the sun, there are moments when our orbit aligns with the sun's motion through the galaxy. During those times, the dark matter wind grows stronger. More particles pass through Earth per second. The pressure increases in a way so subtle that only the quietest detectors on the planet can sense it. Then, 6 months later, our orbit turns us against the sun's motion. The wind slackens. The pressure eases. The sea becomes momentarily calmer. This is the annual modulation, an invisible tide cycle that repeats over and over, whether we are awake to it or not. A cosmic heartbeat, steady and patient. Scientists build enormous detectors underground to listen for these changes. They fill massive tanks with xenon or argon, shield them from cosmic rays, bury them beneath mountains to keep the detectors still. Because to hear the dark matter sea, you must be somewhere utterly quiet. In those chambers of stillness, where every atom waits in the dark, scientists hope for a single, faint flash, the moment when a dark matter particle bumps into the nucleus of an atom. Not a violent collision, just a whisper of energy too small for a human to feel, but large enough for a sensor to catch if it is listening carefully. Some experiments have claimed to see something, others see nothing. The universe maintains its silence, and yet the silence is misleading, because the sea is not silent. It is simply soft. Imagine the deepest ocean trench on Earth, miles below the sunlit surface, where pressure builds until even steel bends. But in the dark matter sea, there is no pressure like that. Its push is not forceful, it is patient. Its influence is not violent, it is steady. Galaxies rotate faster than they should, because this sea holds them together. Stars cling to their spirals because this sea cradles them. Clusters of galaxies remain bound across millions of light years because this sea wraps around them with silent gravity. Every structure we can see is only possible because of what we cannot see. And this is where the invisible ripple becomes more than a poetic idea. It is real. Every swirl of ordinary matter, every cloud of gas, every star, every planet, formed because dark matter created a gravitational well for it to gather in. The ripples of the dark sea are the original scaffolding of the universe. Without them, there would be no galaxies. Without galaxies, no stars. Without stars, no elements beyond hydrogen. No carbon, no oxygen, no planets, no oceans of water, no oceans of life. We owe everything to a sea we cannot touch. And though we drift within it unknowingly, it continues to shape our future, not just our past. As the sun follows its slow orbit around the galactic center, one full revolution every 230 million years, it moves through regions of the halo that are denser or sparser. Ancient streams of dark matter left behind by long-dead dwarf galaxies pass through the Milky Way. Clumps drift like submerged rocks beneath the surface. Filaments stretch like unseen rivers, guiding the flow of ordinary matter across cosmic distances. Sometimes, I picture the galaxy not as a spinning disk of light, but as a vast, dark ocean illuminated only by glowing foam. The stars are the foam. The dark matter is the water. That is how much of the universe is shaped, not by light, by shadow. And within that shadow, Earth continues its silent travel, day after day, year after year, century after century. Our planet moves through invisible gradients, drifting through slow, massive tides that stretch across half the galaxy. We don't think of space as a place with currents, but it is. If you could stand far, outside the Milky Way, and watch dark matter flow as if it were liquid, the halo would shimmer with motion. You'd see faint eddies around the spiral arms, slow streams drifting like underwater rivers, large structures tens of thousands of light years across, moving so gradually that even 1,000,000 years would only show their first steps. And somewhere inside that enormous tide, a small yellow star drifts along a gentle curve, carrying a tiny blue planet that believes itself still. Earth has never been still. It moves through the dark matter sea, the way a lone lantern floats down a river at night, glowing softly, unaware of the water sliding past. And perhaps that is why the invisible ripple matters so much, because it reminds us that we are part of something enormous, ancient, and alive with motion, that even in the quiet of night, when everything seems motionless, the universe is carrying us forward, slowly, steadily, endlessly. And sometimes, in that motion, another pattern begins to emerge, something deeper, something more mysterious. As if the sea we drift through holds memories, places where gravity thickens, where old collisions left imprints, where the halo's structure whispers of events long faded from the visible universe. As if the darkness remembers what the light has forgotten. And that sense of a hidden memory, of a deeper current beneath the surface of the invisible sea, is where another kind of motion begins to reveal itself. One that does not flow smoothly, one that carries hints of something unexpected forming in the depths. It's subtle at first, only a faint distortion, a slight thickening, a whisper of weight. But it is enough to suggest that the dark sea has layers we have barely begun to understand. Layers that shape not only the structure of galaxies, but the very motion of the stars within them. Layers we are drifting toward, even now. Layers that bring us closer to a stranger part of the story, a part waiting just beyond the next quiet breath. And those deeper layers of the dark sea, the ones we were only beginning to sense, move with a different kind of rhythm. Not the broad, steady push of the galactic current, but something more irregular, more intricate, as if hidden streams were winding through the larger tide, twisting, folding, slipping across one another in slow, ancient patterns that no star could disrupt. For a long moment, imagine this darkness not as emptiness, but as texture, a vast, three-dimensional weaving of invisible currents, some thick, some thin, some old enough to remember the birth of galaxies, some young enough to still be settling into shape. Now picture Earth drifting into one of those currents, not violently, not abruptly, just the way a swimmer might drift into a warm pocket of water in the deep ocean, unexpected, subtle, but unmistakable once you feel it. Of course, we do not feel it, not with our skin, not with nerves, not with any instrument tuned to the world we evolved in, but gravity feels it. And the cosmos responds to it in ways we can measure only with time, patience, and an understanding that the universe rarely reveals itself all at once. There is a strange truth about dark matter streams. They are not uniform. They are not smooth. The halo around the Milky Way is laced with remnants of ancient collisions, long, thin rivers of dark matter left behind when small galaxies were torn apart by the Milky Way's gravity. These streams persist for billions of years, stretching across vast regions of space like scars of forgotten histories. Some are thick as continents, others as thin as smoke drifting through still air. Earth moves through these structures without ever realizing it. And yet, if you could see the gravity they exert, if you could visualize the invisible ripple they leave behind, you would see patterns swirling through the crane, darkness like ink folded into water. You would see the ghostly outlines of galaxies long gone, preserved only as currents in the dark. If you close your eyes for a moment, imagine that these currents are voices, soft, ancient, layered atop one another, each stream a whisper from something that once lived as a galaxy, a cluster, a starry system devoured by larger structures. Their stories are not engraved in starlight. They are encoded in motion. And Earth is drifting through one of those stories right now. Picture the path of the sun around the galaxy, an immense orbit that takes hundreds of millions of years. Along that orbit, we cross streams that were once the bones of smaller galaxies. Their stars may have merged into the Milky Way long ago, but their dark matter continues forward, flowing in elongated trails that wrap around the galaxy like ribbons. Scientists have names for some of these ghosts: the Sagittarius Stream, the Cetus Stream, the Orphan Stream, remnants of ancient galaxies stretched thin across the halo. Their visible stars are few, but their dark matter rivers remain almost entirely intact. And Earth, barely a speck in the cosmic scale, sometimes sails through these rivers without ever knowing. For a long time, researchers believed the halo of dark matter was smooth and even, uniform sphere that embraced the galaxy. But the more we studied it, the more we realized it behaves like a layered ocean, calm on the surface, deeply structured beneath, not chaotic, but profoundly varied. A quiet complexity, a hidden architecture. And this is where the story becomes stranger still. Because the dark matter wind Earth feels is not just the result of our motion through the galaxy, it is also shaped by whatever stream or substructure we happen to be passing through at this moment in cosmic time. Sometimes the wind thickens, sometimes it thins, sometimes its direction shifts by a fraction of a round degree. Sometimes its velocity changes just enough to nudge the predictions of experiments on Earth into ambiguous territory. These fluctuations are not accidents. They are the signatures of the invisible architecture around us. In the deep detectors underground, where tanks of xenon wait in silence, scientists occasionally observe signals that seem to defy the simplest models of dark matter. A blip of excess energy, a flicker of unexpected scattering, a pattern that appears once and never again. Many dismiss these as noise, but others wonder if they could be the faint, distant echoes of the invisible ripples in the dark matter sea, the subtle changes caused by streams, clumps, or cold substructures drifting around us. If true, then every strange anomaly recorded in a detector could be a message from a forgotten galaxy carried across time in the motion of its dark matter remains. Imagine that. A detector buried a mile underground, surrounded by stone, steel, momentarily touched by the ghost of a galaxy torn apart billions of years ago, and no one realizes it. This is the quiet drama of the universe, vast, slow, invisible. It does not need spectacle to be profound. It only needs time. Earth continues its drifting journey. With each passing second, the sun moves farther along its orbit, spiraling gently around the galactic center. All the while, the galaxy rotates, the halo breathes, and the dark sea continues to shift around us. There is no soundtrack, no vibration, no glow, but in the absence of sensation, there is imagination. And imagination reveals something simple and beautiful. The dark sea is not silent because it is empty. It is silent because its movements are slower than the lifespan of civilizations. To feel them, we would need to live 1,000,000 years. And yet, through science, we catch glimpses of these motions. Not directly, never directly, but through their gravitational influence on stars, gas, and cosmic structures. Through the faint anomalies recorded in deep underground experiments. Through subtle irregularities in the motions of stellar streams. Every clue points to a single, humbling truth. We are drifting not through a uniform sea, but through a woven tapestry of ancient tides. Some threads of that tapestry are thick, others faint. Some cross our path only once every few 100,000,000 years. Others wrap around us constantly, like the soft embrace of a current, so subtle it can only be felt with equations and patience. And the longer you sit with this idea, the more you realize how strange it is that humanity believes it understands darkness simply because it can describe it with mathematics. Descriptions are not the same as experience. To experience the dark matter sea, we must imagine the unimaginable, a substance that permeates the galaxy, shaping its fate, yet passing through everything, as if everything were transparent. A form of matter that exerts gravity but barely interacts with itself. A medium that binds the universe together without ever revealing itself. In the quiet of this moment, let your mind drift outward, past Earth, past the Sunday, into the vast halo that surrounds our galaxy. There, the invisible ripples spread across distances so large that words like mile, kilometer, or even light year feel almost meaningless. These measurements are too human, too small, too rooted in a world made of atoms. In the halo, distance behaves more like silence, a quality that can stretch forever without becoming thin. And motion becomes the only language. If you could see motion in the dark matter halo, you would see arcs and spirals, long trails left behind by galaxies torn apart. You would see filaments connecting clusters like veins of gravity. You would see regions where the flow thickens, creating the invisible equivalent of underwater mountains. Other regions would swirl gently, like eddies in a river. And through all of these shapes, Earth drifts onward, not knowing, not sensing, not resisting, just drifting. It is in this drifting, in this slow passage through unlit rivers of gravity, that another realization begins to form. Dark matter does not merely surround the galaxy, it sculpts it. Every spiral, every arm, every cluster of stars exists because dark matter carved the pathways for them long before the first stars ignited. We think of galaxies as structures of light, but they are truly structures of shadow, traced by the invisible hand of dark matter. And Earth, fragile and bright, floats inside that shadow like a firefly drifting inside a cavern. We often imagine the night sky as a dome of stars, but the dome is only decoration. The real structure is the dark, the same way the strength of an arch lies not in its stones, but in its emptiness. The halo is the arch that holds the galaxy together. The dark sea is the foundation of everything we see, and the invisible ripple is the subtle reminder, always present, that the darkness we drift through is alive with motion. Even now, as you let the idea settle in your mind, Earth is passing through a slightly denser layer of the halo. The difference is infinitesimal, but it is there a quiet thickening of the current, like stepping into a deeper pool. Nothing dramatic, just a shift, a change felt only by gravity, not by skin. And somewhere far beyond our solar system, in regions where the halo becomes more structured, where ancient streams intersect, where forgotten tidal remnants twist through one another, another ripple begins to form. Not a wave, not a pulse, just a soft layering of density. An invisible ripple beginning its slow drift in our direction. A ripple that will take millions of years to reach us. A ripple that hints at a deeper architecture, one we have not yet explored. One that shapes not only the motion of stars, but potentially the fabric of cosmic time itself. A ripple that reminds us that in the deep darkness, nothing is ever perfectly still, not even the quiet, not even the void. And as that distant ripple inches closer across the vastness, carried by tides older than galaxies, the sea around us subtly shifts, just enough to let another pattern emerge from the dark. A pattern that leads us into stranger waters than the ones we've seen so far. A pattern whose first hints begin here, in the faint thickening of the current. A pattern waiting just beyond this breath. And in that faint thickening of the current, in that barely perceptible swelling of the invisible tide, something begins to shift quietly, almost politely, the way deep currents rearrange themselves beneath the surface of an ocean without leaving a mark above. If you listen closely to the silence between stars, you might sense that the dark sea is not simply drifting, it is rearranging itself. The change does not come with force. Dark matter has no storms, no walls of pressure, no crashing waves. Its movements are gentle, deliberate, shaped by the slow gravity of structures we cannot see. But even gentleness can shape a world. The invisible ripple, soft, persistent, older than starlight, moves through the halo with a patience that could outweigh civilizations. And as it travels, It carries with it faint signatures of where it has been, the ghosts of ancient streams, the gravitational bruise of long collapsed clusters, the thinning scent of tides left behind by galaxies torn apart. Earth drifts directly into this rearranging layer, not because of fate, not because of timing, but because everything in the galaxy drifts. Because nothing, no star, no world, no particle ever remains truly still in the dark. Imagine the sun's motion around the galactic center as the slow turn of a lantern floating through black water. The light moves, the water moves, the darkness folds and unfolds around it in endless cycles. In some regions, the water is thin and still. In others, it gathers, thickens, curls into subtle spirals. The sun has entered one of those spirals. We do not know exactly what carved it. Perhaps the remnant of a dwarf galaxy dissolved billions of years ago. Perhaps the wake of a dark matter clump drifting through the halo like a submerged mountain. Perhaps the relic of an invisible collision where two streams intersected and braided themselves into a calmer, deeper flow. Whatever its origin, this spiral has texture. It is not uniform. Its density shifts the way temperature shifts in deep water so slowly that you notice only when you have already crossed the boundary. Earth crosses that boundary now, and though no human sense can detect it, the difference is real. Gravity becomes ever so slightly more complex. The current presses with a faint but measurable consistency. The invisible ripple that brushed gently against the solar system begins to thicken, lengthen, stretch into a deeper rhythm that hints at something structured below, not chaos, not randomness, a pattern, a shape. The universe is not as smooth as we once assumed. You might imagine that a sea without friction, without charge, without collision, would be perfectly even. But the dark sea is shaped not by contact, but by gravity, by the slow, patient pull of mass across unimaginable distances. And gravity does not create smoothness, it creates complexity. The deeper we drift into this spiral layer, the more the pattern emerges. Not visually, but conceptually, the way a blind hand pressed against a surface discovers texture without seeing it. Picture standing in a vast black expanse where your only guide is pressure. A faint push from the left, a soft tug forward, a slight shift beneath your feet that suggests something massive, distant, and silent drifting past. This is how the solar system moves now. A subtle tug, a faint shift, a gentle reorientation of the wind around us. Our detectors on Earth cannot yet map these changes directly, but they sense the edges, a pulse of unexpected scattering here, a deviation in background noise there, a whisper of energy too clean to be ignored, too quiet to be trusted. Scientists argue. Some say noise, some say calibration errors, some say human imagination, but the dark sea does not care who believes in it. It moves with or without witnesses, and right now, it is beginning to move differently around us. It is almost beautiful, if you let yourself imagine it. This unseen spiral, wrapping around the sun's path like a gentle arm, guiding it through a region of the halo where tides are more intricate than in the open dark. A place where ripples overlap in long, subtle oscillations. A place where density changes, like breath slowly, steadily, meaningfully. The invisible ripple that touched us before has not vanished. It has simply become part of a larger system of motion, a system that suggests the halo may not be a simple sphere, but a layered, breathing structure, a living architecture of gravity. If you picture it, you might imagine sheets of dark matter folded over one another like silk, drifting in and out of alignment as the galaxy turns. Where they overlap, the density thickens. Where they separate, it thins. And through these layers, streams flow like underwater rivers, carrying the memory of galaxies long dissolved. Earth is entering an overlap now, not a collision, not a wall, just a denser fold, an invisible lilt in the sea. And as the planet moves into that fold, the gravitational field around us shifts by an immeasurably small amount. Not enough to alter orbits, not enough to affect the tides of our oceans or the motion of satellites, but enough to leave a faint impression in the cosmic environment that surrounds us. Enough to change the rhythm of the wind. If gravity had tone, we might hear it deepen. If darkness had texture, we might feel it thicken. But we rely on instruments, on chambers of liquid xenon, on sensors colder than interstellar space, on algorithms hunting for single lost photons in the quiet, and the quiet begins to tremble. Not violently, not suddenly, but persistently, like a distant memory brushing against the present. This trembling is not seismic, not physical. It is the trembling of expectation, of a system sensing a new equilibrium. But equilibrium in the dark matter sea is different from the equilibrium in oceans or air. It does not settle quickly. It does not respond to pressure as normal matter does. It adapts slowly, patiently. The deeper Earth moves into the spiral layer, the more the surrounding flow adapts around it, curving, distributing, bending the current into a new pattern. It is not dramatic. It is not visible. But it is as real as the tide that rises without a sound on a windless night. And somewhere ahead, beyond this overlapping region, lies the next part of that pattern, another shift, another layer of the halo's hidden structure. But that comes later. Right now, the most important truth is this: the dark sea is not smooth, and Earth has entered a place where its structure becomes more articulate, a place where the invisible ripple begins to change shape, a place where a deeper kind of motion begins to surface, a place where the darkness itself seems to be whispering. And as that whisper grows soft, persistent, untranslatable, the currents gather themselves, preparing to show us a motion we have not yet imagined. The currents gather themselves, preparing to show us a motion we have not yet imagined. Not a wave, not a pulse, something slower, deeper, spread across distances so large the mind folds in on itself, trying to picture them. As Earth drifts further into this denser fold of the halo, the behavior of the dark sea around us begins to reveal a kind of layering thin sheets of density stacked across cosmic distances. Not rigid, not flat, but fluid, bending and twisting in response to gravity, each sheet interacting with the others in subtle, silent ways. It is as if the galaxy breathes through these sheets, a long inhalation of matter, a long exhalation of motion. And every time a star orbits the center of the Milky Way, it disturbs these layers just enough to leave behind its own faint trail, a shifting of the current, a rearrangement of the dark. The sun, too, leaves such a trail, a soft indentation in the sea behind it as it moves, stretching thousands of astronomical units into the darkness. And Earth, small as it is, adds its own whisper of disturbance, a faint, localized ripple that disappears almost instantly, but still becomes part of the halo's overall texture. This texture, the interplay of sheets, streams, ripples, and folds, is what we are drifting through now. A region not chaotic, but intricately organized in a way we are only beginning to understand. Imagine drifting through a forest of invisible curtains, some thick, some nearly transparent, each one shifting gently as currents pass through them. And as you move, they rearrange themselves, altering the flow without sound or resistance. The solar system has entered such a forest. The density is slightly higher here. Not enough to change the fate of worlds, but enough to alter the pattern of the wind around us. Enough for gravity to feel a new shape beneath its fingers. Enough for the invisible ripple to deepen, lengthen, stretch into a more complex oscillation. If you could freeze time and paint the motions around Earth, you would see spirals nested within spirals. Some broad and slow, shaped by the sun's orbit. Others tighter, like the eddies that form behind a stone in a river. Each one a subtle response to the way dark matter flows around mass. Even light, indifferent to everything except gravity, bends slightly differently here. Not enough to notice, Not enough to change the stars we see, but enough to hint that the darkness around us is becoming more structured. And such structure brings with it something else, a sense of direction. In the open parts of the halo, the dark sea flows in wide, smooth tides, its currents shaped mostly by the sun's motion. But here, in the deeper fold, those tides encounter a guiding shape, a faint gravitational slope, a tilt in the medium. The invisible ripple that brushed softly against our path grows more pronounced. Not louder, there is no sound. Not brighter, there is no light, but more coherent, as if it belongs to something larger, something that stretches far beyond our current position, something that suggests the spiral layer we've entered is part of a greater structure, a vast, looping river of dark matter, tracing the path of a long-dissolved galaxy. This river is faint. Its presence is subtle, but it is there, flowing, old, patient. Its motion is slower than driftwood on a quiet stream, yet faster than tectonic plates. It carries the memory of where it came from, the mass that once shaped it, the stars that once followed it. And as Earth drifts deeper into this river, the patterns of the wind change once again. The current becomes directional, sliding past the solar system at an angle slightly different from the broad galactic tide, like a second breeze layered on top of the first, a breeze carrying clues of unimaginable age, a breeze with history. This is where the dark sea becomes more than a medium. It becomes a witness. Across billions of years, these rivers have held together long enough for us to pass through them. Their structure, preserved by gravity and isolation, gives shape to the halo like the hidden grain in a piece of ancient wood. And now, for the first time in millions of years, Earth moves through a section of that grain. The implications are subtle, but profound. A different velocity profile, a slightly altered scattering environment, a shift in the tiny probability that a dark matter particle might bump into an atomic nucleus on Earth. To us, these changes are imperceptible, but to the instruments deep underground, they are not meaningless. A detector buried beneath a mountain might register a handful of events, small spikes, slight excesses that defy the simplest expectations. None of them dramatic enough to make headlines. None of them large enough to claim discovery. But collectively, they form a pattern that feels like a faint echo, an echo of a long-dead galaxy brushing past the living one. The scientists who study these anomalies do not know that Earth is passing through a dark river. They only know that something in the data refuses to behave. But the dark sea does not care whether we understand it. It moves in its own time, guided by forces older than starlight. As Earth drifts deeper into this current, something beautiful begins to unfold. The realization that this river has layers too, not in the sense of stratification, but in the sense of motion. Some parts of the flow move slightly faster, some slightly slower. The difference is so small that all of humanity could live and die without noticing. But on cosmic timescales, the distinction matters. It shapes the texture of the halo. It shapes the gravitational environment that stars feel. It shapes the invisible ripple that accompanies us now. This ripple elongates as we move, stretching far behind the solar system like the wake of a boat drifting through still water. It is almost poetic, this idea of Earth carving a path through darkness, leaving behind a ripple that lasts only moments, but still belongs to the sea in some small way. And ahead, the river bends, not sharply, not suddenly, just a graceful, ancient curve in the flow, the remnant of whatever gravitational event created it long ago. Maybe a merger, maybe a disruption, maybe the passing of something massive in the deep dark. We drift toward that curve now. It is impossible to see, impossible to detect directly, but the invisible ripple reveals a hint of its presence, the slightest change in orientation, like the beginning of a slope underfoot. The dark river is guiding us, not consciously, not deliberately, just through motion, through gravity, through the simple truth that everything in the universe shapes everything else. And as we lean gently toward that bend, the sea around us begins to deepen once more, not in density, not in speed, but in complexity. Layers of motion fold over one another, some large, some small, some familiar, some foreign to anything the sun has encountered in many orbits. And somewhere within that complexity, another presence waits. Not an object, not a force, but a pattern. Something quieter than a whisper, older than the river itself, emerging from the place where streams converge into deeper tides. Something that pulls us forward ever so gently. A motion that opens into the next chamber of the dark sea. A motion we drift toward now, without knowing, without resisting, carried by currents that have been moving long before Earth was born. And in the soft thickening of that motion, in that subtle tilt of the invisible ripple, a deeper question begins to rise. A question the darkness itself seems ready to unfold. A question that leads the way into the next layer of this unseen ocean. And in that soft tilt of the invisible ripple, in that almost imperceptible guidance of the dark river curling around us, something begins to emerge beneath the motion, the way a deeper current reveals itself only when the water above becomes calm enough for you to feel the pull. Not a force, not a pressure, but a quiet suggestion, a kind of gravitational whisper, carrying the shape of something older than the river itself. For a moment, imagine drifting through this region of the dark sea, with your senses tuned not to light or sound, but to gravity. Imagine gravity not as a single downward tug, but as a field of sensations, textures, gradients, gentle slopes spread across space. Imagine feeling how the current thickens on one side, how a deeper mass lies just beyond the horizon of perception, how the flow around you curves for reasons that are not immediately visible. This is what the solar system is experiencing now, a soft, coherent curvature in the dark. The dark matter river we've entered is not just a strand of ancient debris. It is part of a larger structure, a confluence, a merging, a slow, immense gathering of streams that hints at something beneath, something like a submerged ridge in the ocean that reshapes currents flowing over it. For a long time, astronomers suspected that the halo might contain subhalos, small clumps of dark matter, like islands beneath the surface of the sea. Not dense enough to form stars, not luminous, just knots of gravity drifting independently, relics of the early universe. Most of them, if they exist, would be completely invisible. But their presence could be inferred through motion, through how they disturb the surrounding flow, how they bend streams around them, how they send ripples of gravity outward, the way a submerged boulder creates a soft turbulence in river water. And the longer Earth drifts through this region, the more it feels as if something like that might lie ahead. Not a massive island, not a tidal wave, nothing dangerous, just a presence, a quiet fold in the darkness. The invisible ripple senses it first, not detecting, but responding to the subtle curvature of the flow. It elongates, further, aligning itself with the direction of this hidden mass. The dark matter wind that once flowed mostly from one direction now arrives with a slight asymmetry, a faint tilt that is nearly impossible to describe in ordinary terms, like the soft pull of a distant shore. If the sun and its planets were drifting across the ocean at night, and the waves began to lean by fractions of degrees, you might sense land long before it appears. Here, the land is gravitational, a soft elevation in the halo, a mound of density that has persisted for billions of years, not enough to attract stars, not enough to bend light, but enough to shape the currents of the dark sea. As Earth approaches this region, the density gradient becomes more layered, more structured. The current does not simply flow, it adjusts. It divides into subtle branches. Some parts slide more quickly, others slow as they encounter deeper gravity. The dark sea is revealing a spine, a ridgeline of unseen matter, stretching across hundreds of light years, and the solar system is drifting toward its slope. Yet the motion is not violent. Gravity rarely announces itself loudly on these scales. It acts with patience, with restraint, with a softness that belies its power. Even now, as the density grows subtly uneven, the planets continue their dance unchanged. Earth orbits the sun with the same precision. The moon traces its quiet path. The tides rise and fall. The seasons continue. Every terrestrial sign of gravity remains the same, but the dark signs, the cosmic signs, shift by a hair's breadth. Deep underground, the detectors listening for the faintest whispers feel a change in the texture of the background noise. Not louder, just different, as if the river is no longer flowing over smooth stone, but over something slightly rougher, something with history carved into it. These changes are so small, they slip beneath the threshold of certainty. They appear as short-lived anomalies, spikes that disappear as quickly as they arrive. Scientists argue, some call them statistical fluctuations, others suspect seasonal effects, instrument quirks, data smoothing errors, but a few, very few, wonder whether these anomalies are the traces of something deeper in the halo, a structure beyond measurement, a subhalo, a knot of dark matter, not a mountain under the sea, but something like a long, submerged ridge, left from a forgotten cosmic event. The dark ripple begins to lean toward it, and as it does, Earth enters a region where the flow divides into two currents, one passing smoothly, the other bending around the hidden mass. This division is incredibly subtle, but in the language of the dark sea, it is meaningful. It means we are approaching a gravitational shelf, a place where density increases gradually, shaping the flow the way underwater topography shapes waves. Picture this. You are floating in deep water with eyes closed. The surface is calm, everything is soft, but then you drift into a region where the sea feels slightly different beneath you. The temperature shifts, the rhythm changes, the water wraps around you in a new way, as if the depths below have grown uneven. That is what Earth is entering now, a deeper fold, a thicker layer, a region where the dark matter sea carries the faint geometry of something ancient, something older than the Milky Way itself. Perhaps it is the remnant of a primordial fluctuation, one of the first clumps of dark matter to form after the Big Bang. Perhaps it is debris from an early merger, a chunk of gravitational architecture left behind as galaxies cannibalized one another in the chaotic adolescence of the universe. Perhaps it is a strand of a vast cosmic web filament passing through the halo. Whatever its origin, it alters the flow around it, and the invisible ripple carries that alteration, like an imprint, a soft warping of the dark tide. This warping is delicate but persistent. It causes the dark matter wind to drift ever so slightly sideways. The shape of the current becomes asymmetric. The pressure of the flow, if such a word can be used for something so intangible, changes by an amount too small to measure directly. But what cannot be measured can still be imagined. And imagination is the first form of insight. If you were drifting through this region with senses attuned to gravity, you would feel the current shifting around you, not pushing, not pulling, just rearranging itself the way the flow of a river changes as it passes a bend, and slowly a pattern emerges. The deeper fold is not chaotic, it is organized. Its structure suggests a kind of layering that appears deliberate. Though no deliberate hand shaped it, gravity shaped it, time shaped it. The long, slow merging of dark matter streams shaped it. The solar system drifts into this organized fold, and the invisible ripple stretches, amplifies, elongates, as if tracing the curvature of the deeper structure. You might imagine this ripple as a whisper drawn into a longer sigh, slower, deeper, resonant with something far beneath the surface. For the first time, the dark sea begins to feel less like a medium and more like a landscape without edges or color or sound, a landscape made entirely of gradients and motion, a landscape where Earth is just a wanderer following the currents. And as we move deeper into that landscape, the dark fold begins to show another characteristic: resonance, not vibration, not sound, but a kind of gravitational harmony. Certain layers of the river seem to move in phase with one another, while others drift out of sync. The effect is comparable to standing between two waves traveling through water, one long, one short, producing an interference pattern you can feel rather than see. Earth enters that interference pattern now. To our senses, nothing changes. Yet in the quiet calculations of nature, a new rhythm emerges. The currents layer themselves into a more complex dynamic, a dance that extends across light years, woven from the remnants of ancient galaxies. And deeper still, beneath those rhythms, something else begins to emerge. A slow deviation in the motion around us, as if the dark sea were preparing to show another hidden aspect of its architecture, something that has remained concealed for billions of years beneath folds of motion. Something the invisible ripple now begins to trace with delicate precision. A deeper current, one that does not simply flow around mass, but flows because of mass, because of something resting in the dark far ahead of us, waiting behind layers of motion. A presence not of light, but of weight. A presence we drift toward now, drawn not by force, but by the subtle shaping of the river. A presence that will reveal itself only gradually, through the shifting of the invisible ripple, as the dark sea deepens into its next hidden form, a form waiting just beyond this gentle turn in the current, and in that barely perceptible gravity-born whisper guiding us through the deeper fold of the dark sea. A new kind of motion begins to form. Not louder, not sharper, but more deliberate, like the tightening of a current far beneath the surface, gathering itself in preparation for a shape that has waited long before any star was born. Earth drifts toward that shape with the same quiet inevitability that carries every world through the halo, unaware, unresisting, carried by tides that predate memory itself. Try to imagine the darkness now not as a smooth void, but as a layered expanse of invisible currents, some wide enough to cradle entire clusters, others narrow as streams of gravitational filament. And within those layers, structures that only gravity can sculpt, elongated clumps, tidal remnants, folded sheets, slow-moving ribbons of mass that drift through the halo like drifting smoke. One of those shapes lies ahead. We cannot see it. We cannot touch it. But the invisible ripple feels it first, not as impact, not as force, as texture. Gravity has texture when you drift long enough. The solar system, now dazed deeper into the thickening fold, begins to feel a subtle imbalance in the sea. The dark matter wind no longer presses uniformly from the same direction. It bends slightly toward the hidden mass, shaping the flow. Only gravity's long patience can smooth that bend across thousands of light years, but the effect is unmistakable to a universe that speaks its language. If light could reveal this, the halo around us would appear like layers of shadowed water folding, stretching, bending gently around submerged structures. But because darkness does not glow, we must imagine the distortion instead, an unseen bulge in the flow, shaped like an ancient scar from a forgotten collision. This is not a subhalo in the ordinary sense. It is something more elusive, too light to be a dwarf galaxy, too large to be a clump, too coherent to be noise. A remnant of an event older than any star still burning. Earth is drifting directly into the region reshaped by this remnant, not into the remnant itself. That lies far deeper, far ahead, but into the outer skirts of its gravitational influence, an expanse where the dark sea reorganizes into bands of varying density. These bands shift like the layers of an atmosphere, thicker, thinner, faster, slower, yet all invisible, all silent, all guided by a structure we can sense only through the invisible ripple. This ripple, which once trailed behind the solar system like a faint wake, now begins to coil slightly, aligning itself with the curvature of the banded flow. It elongates, narrows, stretches into a shape that reflects the deeper gradient beneath. If you could stop time and step outside the galaxy, you might see this as an elegant movement, a drifting world carried across dark tides that shapeshift with the soft grace of cosmic breath. But here, inside the system, it feels like nothing at all. The planets orbit as they always have. The sun glows unchanged. Life on Earth continues, unaware that the fabric of motion around it has grown more structured. But structure always leaves traces. In experiments where scientists listen for dark matter, the background noise begins to behave oddly. Not stronger, not weaker, but differently. Patterns emerge that should not be patterns. A scattering event here, a subtle deviation there, noise that looks a little less like noise, a faint seasonal rhythm that is not quite the seasonal modulation they expect. Some would call it coincidence, others statistical mischief. But the dark sea does not produce mischief, it produces motion. And motion leaves fingerprints. Picture the banded flow around the hidden mass, like giant, slow-moving sheets of gravity. As Earth drifts through them, each sheet leaves a faint difference in the wind, like moving between layers of slightly different temperature in a deep lake. Except here, the temperature is density, and the lake is the unseen architecture of the halo. The first band is subtle, a soft thickening, barely a murmur of change. The second is more structured, with a directional drift that slightly tilts the invisible ripple around the solar system. The dark matter wind changes angle, perhaps by a fraction of a degree. Too small to notice, too small to measure directly, but patterns notice. Deep beneath mountains, inside detectors shielded from cosmic radiation, grains of xenon or argon or germanium wait in absolute stillness. When the dark matter wind shifts, the probability of rare interactions shifts too. Not enough to claim detection, but enough to hint at a story unfolding beneath consciousness. If we had senses for this, the experience would feel like drifting through currents layered with ancient stories. Each band you pass through whispers something different about the structure that shaped it, a memory stamped into the motion of the sea. The solar system moves into the third band. This layer is broader, smoother, stretched like a long sheet of gravity pulled taut by some ancient force. It slows the flow slightly, redirecting it into a curvature that implies a deeper mass beneath. A mass the sun will not reach for many thousands of years, but already its influence is felt in the softest rearrangements of the tide. The invisible ripple lengthens again. It narrows. It aligns more closely with the new curvature. The dark sea is learning to speak in patterns, and Earth, silent, drifting, carried by its orbit, follows without awareness. Life on its surface lives and dies. Civilizations rise and fall, but the tide beneath never stops its quiet reconfiguration. There is a humility in that, a reminder that the universe is older than story, older than memory, older than anything that breathes. As the solar system glides deeper into this architecture, the bands of density begin to converge, not collapse, converge. Their orientations align, their gradients synchronize. Motion becomes more coherent, as if the hidden mass ahead imposes a kind of gravitational harmony. Imagine currents in a vast ocean becoming aligned as they approach a deep underwater basin. The water does not rush, it simply reorganizes itself, finding the most natural path around the basin's shape. That is what the dark sea is doing now. The density gradient ahead is deeper, smoother, more pronounced, not dangerous, not threatening, only ancient. A gravitational structure polished by billions of years of motion, its shape refined by the slow grinding of cosmic time. The dark sea curves around it with reverent patience, and Earth drifts toward the beginning of that curve. As the curvature increases, the invisible ripple undergoes a subtle transformation. It no longer trails behind the solar system, it begins to wrap. Not fully, not dramatically, but enough to signal that the flow is becoming multi-directional, a sign that the mass ahead is not linear or flat, but three-dimensional, rounded, sculpted by forces long gone. The dark sea around us begins to thicken gently, like the first hint of a deeper ocean trench. The gradient strengthens, The flow becomes more organized. Every movement acquires intention, shaped by the submerged presence ahead. Still, Earth feels nothing. This is the beauty of the dark sea. The closer you move toward its structures, the quieter it becomes. Violence belongs to light. Patience belongs to dark. The next shift is subtle but profound. The density bands narrow. Their angles tighten. Their rhythms synchronize into a slow gravitational pulsar pattern, so stretched across time that a human mind can barely conceive its duration. But the invisible ripple feels it. It senses the rhythm the way a drifting leaf might sense the deeper pulse of an ocean it floats upon. Not as sound, not as pressure, as a change in direction, a hint of deeper motion. A suggestion that the sea below is no longer featureless, but sculpted an ancient basin carved into the fabric of the halo. And for the first time since entering this region, the flow around Earth begins to show something like acceleration, not forward, inward, a soft gravitational slope guiding the currents toward the mass buried beneath layers of motion. This is the first true sign of the subhalo, not the subhalo itself, but the valley carved in the sea around it. And Earth is drifting toward the rim of that valley now. Not falling, not sinking, just gliding down the gentlest of slopes, shaped by the slow breathing of the dark. The invisible ripple tightens, its curvature deepening as it traces the early outline of the valley's edge. The rhythm of motion becomes more layered. The density bands begin to approach one another, merging into broader sheets of flow. The wind shifts once more, becoming more coherent, more directional. If one could see the halo from above, it would appear as if the solar system were entering the faint gravitational imprint of a forgotten structure, like drifting into the shadow of a mountain beneath a moonless sea. Earth drifts into that shadow, and as it does, something new begins to hum through the dark sea. Not vibration, not resonance, not sound. Something quieter, a kind of gravitational echo that spreads across the bands, translating the shape of the structure ahead into the motion itself. The invisible ripple carries the first hints of that echo, a soft tightening, a deeper curve, a whisper of a presence waiting deeper in the valley. Not a threat, not a storm, a memory. The memory of something massive that once shaped this region of the halo, something whose influence persists long after its light, if it ever had any, vanished. The dark sea leans gently toward that memory, and Earth moves with it. The valley deepens, the flow thickens, the ripple tightens, and in the soft convergence of those motions, a new layer of the dark sea prepares to reveal itself, a layer older, quieter, waiting just beyond this descending slope in the unseen architecture of the night. And as the valley in the dark sea deepens around the drifting solar system, the shape of the hidden mass ahead reveals itself not through sight, but through motion, an orchestration of currents rearranging in a way only gravity could conduct. The invisible ripple tightens again, its arc sharpening into a faint, graceful curve, as if tracing the edge of an unseen basin carved into the halo. The farther Earth drifts, the more that curvature asserts itself, not violently, but with a kind of ancient authority, like the quiet slope of a continent hidden beneath midnight water. The dark sea responds to this slope in layers, first slowly, then with synchrony. Flow that once felt wide and unstructured begins to narrow. Currents that moved with easy freedom begin to align. The gradient becomes directional, guiding the invisible tide toward the central depression of the valley. The solar system is not falling into this valley. It is gliding along its rim, carried not by force but by inevitability, a passive passenger in the long gravitational story unfolding around it. Imagine drifting beside a quiet coastline at night. You cannot see the shore, you cannot hear it, but you feel the water change. The current shifts, the pull becomes more deliberate. You sense land not by sight, but through texture. The hidden mass shaping the valley is that kind of land. Not a planet, not a star, not a black hole, nothing luminous, simply a collection of dark matter dense enough to leave a mark on the sea, a structure as invisible as the medium shaping it. The valley grows deeper as the sun drifts forward. The bands of density that define the outer regions begin to merge into broader currents. Their motion becomes more articulate, like long, slow ribbons of water finding harmony as they move toward a common destination. Some parts of the current accelerate slightly, sliding ahead like scouts in the dark. Others slow, allowing gravity to settle them into the folds of the valley. And woven through these shifting layers lies a new kind of pattern, one that feels less like motion and more like resonance. Not vibration, not sound, but a coordinated timing between layers of movement. The dark sea behaves as if portions of it are echoing the central mass, rippling in slow synchrony with a pulse that spans thousands of years per cycle. If time were stretched like a fabric, this ripple would be the faint undulation across it. The solar system enters the region where this resonance becomes most coherent. At first, it appears as only a gentle tilt in the dark matter wind. Then the flow grows steadier, more aligned, more insistent, though not forceful. It is the difference between drifting through open ocean and moving along a deep underwater channel carved by centuries of currents passing the same way. The channel is not a funnel. It is not a trap. It is simply the shape the dark sea has worn into itself around the mass. Gravity, given billions of years, carves like water, and this channel is one of its carvings. Inside it, motion becomes elegant. Currents wrap around each other in broad spirals. Density increases by fractions so small they defy ordinary comprehension. Yet these fractions matter on cosmic scales. They shape how the halo bends light, how stars drift in the outskirts, how clusters remain bound. They also shape the path of Earth. Without knowing, without sensing, the solar system follows the channel's curvature. The invisible ripple winds around it, the gravitational echo growing stronger, not louder, not heavier, but more unified, as though the dark sea is beginning to hum in a single, long-held note. If it could be heard, the note would be low enough to vibrate only once every millennia. But it is not sound, it is motion. Motion humming across the layers of the halo. Imagine a bow drawn slow across the string of a cosmic instrument. Too slow for sound to form, but enough for the entire ocean of darkness to shift in response. The halo is that instrument. The valley is its resonance chamber, and the hidden mass is the hand guiding the bow. The nature of that mass becomes clearer through the motion alone. It is not the dense core of a dwarf galaxy, too diffuse for that. It is not a compact subhalo predicted by cold dark matter simulations. Its gradient is too smooth, too patient, too stretched across space. This is something older, something primordial, a fossil of the early universe, a clump of dark matter that never gathered enough density to ignite star formation, never grew into a galaxy, never collapsed into anything luminous, yet survived the chaotic collisions and mergers that shaped the Milky Way. A survivor, not because it was strong, but because it was quiet. The valley formed around this primordial clump is its biography, written in gravity rather than light. The currents folding around it carry the memory of its existence across all the ages of the galaxy. And now Earth drifts through the outskirts of that biography. The channel narrows, the flow intensifies not sharply, but coherently, like the gathered streams of a river approaching a deep bend. The invisible ripple sharpens further, spiraling almost imperceptibly, its shape a reflection of the deepening curvature below. The dark sea is preparing to reveal something, a shift in the gravitational topography that Earth has not encountered in millions of years. As the gradient deepens, the current starts to show irregularities, tiny fluctuations in density, scattered like pebbles in a stream bed. These fluctuations carry the signature of earlier epochs, small beams of motion left behind by microcollapses, small interactions within the dark matter itself, ancient rearrangements that occurred long before the sun existed. These remnants of motion make the halo feel uneven, fractured, layered, Like the sediments of a forgotten seabed, the solar system drifts deeper. Patterns grow more pronounced. Currents align more tightly. Motion becomes layered enough that the invisible ripple begins to twist, not in turbulence, but in recognition, as though the dark sea is tracing the contours of something deeper below the valley. Earth enters a region where the flow behaves like breath-slow expansion, slow contraction, across centuries-long cycles. The origin of this rhythmic motion is gravitational, not mechanical. It may be tied to the rotation of the substructure beneath, or to the collective oscillation of dark matter bound to it. Even the halo breathes in its own way. Dark matter does not collide, but it vibrates in gravitational space, shifting in and out of equilibrium over timescales far beyond biological life. These shifts ripple outward in slow waves, shaping the valley around the mass. Earth touches the edge of one such wave now. The current feels slightly thicker, slightly more organized. A faint acceleration against one side of the solar system's drift hints that the valley is steepening ever so slightly as the hidden clump approaches, still dozens of light years away, still too diffuse to alter orbits, but enough to shape the flow in a way even our deepest detectors sense only as a phantom pattern. If gravity could whisper, this is how it would speak. The valley deepens gently but unmistakably. The channel winds into a slow arc. The dark sea folds inward, its layers shifting like curtains in a windless room. Every movement, every flow, every ripple carries information, not in symbols or language, but in motion itself. And motion reveals this. The solar system is approaching the closest point of its drift around the primordial mass. Not a collision, not a rendezvous, just proximity passing along the rim of the valley carved around a clump that has existed almost unchanged since the cosmic dawn. The invisible ripple wraps itself slightly closer around the arc, drawn toward the center of gravity like a thin filament adjusting its course. The flow tightens. The rhythm slows. The valley reaches a point where its curvature becomes smooth, quiet, and deep enough to guide the currents in near-perfect synchronicity. For a long stretch of drift, nothing dramatic happens. But beneath the quiet lies a growing sense of coherence, as though the entire region has become part of a single motion, a long, dark inhalation. And just as the halo inhales around the valley, something subtle shifts beneath it. A deeper current, a colder layer, a motion that does not align with the others. A motion that hints at a second structure, not larger, not heavier, just deeper, as if the valley itself rests atop an even older depression in the halo. Earth begins drifting toward that lower layer. The dark sea begins to change shape again. The invisible ripple steadies itself, preparing to trace a new descent, a descent into something quieter, older, waiting beneath the valley's floor in the deeper architecture of the unseen ocean. And as the solar system eases toward the lower layer hinted beneath the valley, the dark sea shifts again, not suddenly, not sharply, but with the same slow inevitability that guides tides beneath an unseen moon. Everything grows quieter inside this deeper region. The currents lose some of their turbulence. The density variations smooth into long, gentle bands, and the invisible ripple begins to flatten, as if preparing itself for a new geometry of motion. This quieting is not a sign of simplicity. It is the signature of depth. In any ocean, the deeper you go, the fewer disturbances reach you. Surface waves fade, mid-layer currents thin, light vanishes. Only the slow, ancient circulation of the abyss remains, movements shaped not by weather or seasons, but by the long, patient breathing of the planet. In the dark matter sea, this deeper circulation is shaped not by temperature or salinity, but by the gravitational architecture imprinted into the halo billions of years ago. It is motion carved by the early universe itself. Now, the solar system drifts into that abyssal motion. The hidden mass that carved the valley above is no longer the primary sculptor here. Its gravity influences the upper layers, but beneath them lies a second, older foundation, one that stretches far beyond the small primordial clump shaping the valley. This deeper structure feels vast, broad, distributed, not like a singular mass, but like the residue of something enormous, diluted across time. If the valley above is a scar, this lower region is the ancient bone beneath it. The invisible ripple senses the shift before anything else. Instead of tracing a tightening curve, it begins to widen, stretching across a broader front of motion. The arc flattens, the curvature relaxes. The ripple spreads outward as if adjusting itself to a plane rather than a slope. Imagine drifting down a slope and suddenly finding yourself gliding across a wide, quiet plateau where the water changes texture. The bottom feels farther away, the pressure steadier, the currents more predictable. Everything becomes soft in a way that speaks of depth rather than calm. That is the sensation now. A depth beyond the valley. A quiet that holds a different meaning. Here, the dark sea is not chaotic or fragmented. It is smooth, not because it lacks structure, but because its structure lies across scales too large for local motion to break. It is governed by a gravitational influence so ancient and so broad that everything inside it participates in its shape without struggle. The solar system moves into the boundary of this broad realm, and for a long, drifting moment, nothing changes. The flow remains steady, the gradient constant, the density stable. But then, slowly, a new pattern begins to appear. It does not arrive like a wave. It arrives like the slow emergence of a landscape through fog too large to comprehend at once, too subtle to detect directly, but undeniably present. The deeper layer is not empty. It is full of motion, the kind of motion that takes tens of millions of years to reveal its full form. The halo's abyss contains slow, vast, circulating tides, long arcs of dark matter drift that trace the Milky Way's evolution across its lifetime. These abyssal tides move with symmetry. Not perfect symmetry, gravity rarely allows that, but enough to create a sense of order far beneath the turbulent bands above. The invisible ripple begins to follow these deeper tides. Its shape shifts from curve to line, from tight arc to elongated wavefront, as if aligning itself to the direction of a massive, slow-moving flow beneath the valley. The ripple senses this deep tide the way a leaf floating on a lake might feel the gentle tug of a long, ancient current pulling beneath the surface. And this deeper tide carries history. Not the history of galaxies merging or stars forming, but the history of the halo itself, the original gravitational dance that shaped the Milky Way from its earliest state. The solar system is now drifting through a region shaped by those primordial motions. The dark sea here moves in long, coherent flows that began before the sun was born, before the spiral arms fully formed, before light had gathered into the patterns we now call galaxies. These primordial flows are the fossil currents of the early dark matter web. Imagine watching ancient tectonic plates move beneath a planet's crust, slow, silent, older than every mountain and every sea. The dark tide here is the gravitational equivalent of those plates, sliding in directions set at the dawn of cosmic structure. The solar system enters one of these ancient channels. The flow grows purposeful. The density gradient becomes smoother, flatter, more defined. The invisible ripple stretches further, aligning itself exactly with the direction of the ancient tide. It is a strange kind of clarity. The halo above had folds, streams, scars, turbulence signatures of billions of years of galactic evolution. But here, beneath those complexities, lies the underlying architecture, the foundation, the original blueprint. If one could pull away the stars, remove the gas, erase the luminous matter entirely, this deep pattern would remain the skeleton of the Milky Way, carved in dark matter. The solar system glides along one of the ribs of that skeleton. The tides here are enormous. They stretch across thousands of light years. Their arcs are slow, deliberate, repeating over hundreds of millions of years. No experiment on Earth can feel this. No instrument can detect its full shape. But the invisible ripple senses it, reacting to the unified flow with a clarity it never had in the upper layers. For once, the ripple does not stretch unevenly, does not tighten or loosen the way it did in the valley. It becomes smooth, steady, almost serene. And that serenity carries meaning. It means the solar system has entered a region of the halo where motion is organized by something vast enough to overpower the chaos of smaller structures, something broad enough to impose order, something old enough to have survived every merger and collision the Milky Way has undergone. This something is not a single object. It is the collective gravity of the central halo, the deep, rounded basin of dark matter that holds the galaxy together. Every galaxy has one. The Milky Way's is enormous, bigger than all the stars combined, more massive than anything luminous we know. It is the gravitational heart of the galaxy, unseen, yet undeniable. And Earth is drifting across one of its lower contours. The valley above was a local feature, a carve-out in the sea. But this deeper region is global, a structure that spans the entire galactic halo. In this region, the currents of the dark matter sea follow the broad curvature of the halo's inner architecture. The invisible ripple recognizes this curvature, its motion flattening into a broad wave aligned with the direction of the ancient tide. The longer the solar system drifts, the more coherent this pattern becomes. The flow steadies, the density smooths, the motion grows unified. This is the calm beneath complexity, the deep layer that anchors everything above. And yet, even in this calm, there is something hidden. A faint irregularity appears, barely noticeable, a tiny asymmetry in the flow. The deeper tide is not perfectly smooth. It carries a subtle disturbance, a long, slow oscillation shifting through the halo like a gravitational murmur. This murmur is not caused by local structures, not by subhalos, not by streams. It is older, much older. Some theories suggest such oscillations are remnants of the Milky Way's earliest accretion events, massive flows of dark matter that fell inward during the galaxy's formation and have been vibrating in gravitational space ever since. Others propose they are signatures of interactions between the Milky Way's halo and the dark halos of satellite galaxies, ripples created by the soft collisions of invisible oceans brushing past one another. Whatever their origin, the solar system drifts directly into one now. The current does not become turbulent, it becomes resonant. Not noisy, not chaotic, resonant. A long, quiet undulation in the gravitational field. A slow rise and fall across tens of light years. A movement so extended in time that a full cycle might last 100 million years. The invisible ripple responds instantly. It begins to oscillate very slightly along the direction of the deep current, not shaking, not vibrating, stretching and releasing, in a pattern that feels like breathing. The halo breathes again, a deeper breath this time, and the solar system drifts into the valley of that breath. The flow thickens at the trough of the oscillation, the density becoming subtly higher. Then it thins again as the oscillation rises. These changes are imperceptible to any physical sense, but to the dark sea, they are monumental. They shape how currents align, how ripples stretch, how motion organizes across the entire halo. The solar system moves into the densest part of the oscillation, a region where the deep tide compresses slightly, producing a gravitational layering strong enough to alter the dark matter wind in detectable ways. Detectors on Earth would see nothing obvious, but they might record an unusual clustering of background events, a pattern that does not match seasonal modulation, a faint correlation across instruments that cannot be easily explained away. In the language of the dark sea, this is a whisper, a quiet signal, a sign that something deeper is unfolding. The solar system drifts toward the center of the oscillation, and as it does, the invisible ripple begins to reveal the shape of a deeper structure, one tied not to local subhalos or ancient streams, but to the global architecture of the entire halo. A structure the solar system is now approaching. Slowly, quietly, inevitably, the dark sea prepares to open its next layer, a layer where the deep tide reveals its full curvature, waiting beneath the oscillation's slow descent in the unseen depth of the halo. And as the solar system drifts deeper into the long descent of that ancient oscillation, a new curvature begins to emerge beneath the calm, slow, solemn, unmistakable. The deep tide that guided the motion so far is no longer simply a broad, quiet plateau of gravity. It is beginning to bend, not sharply, not suddenly, but with the same patient inevitability that has shaped galaxies since the first atoms cooled. The invisible ripple senses this first. Its long wavefront once stretched wide and even begins to arc gently along a path determined not by local streams or valleys, but by the larger gravitational body beneath the halo itself. A curvature so vast, so subtle, so old, that nothing in the luminous universe can fully express it. This is the curvature of the inner halo. For the first time, the solar system is entering a region where the gravitational geometry of the dark sea shifts from the influence of scattered substructures to the grand, unified shape of the halo's core. If the galaxy were a vast bowl, the solar system has begun to approach its inner walls, not the glowing spiral arms, not the visible light, but the deeper gravitational contours carved in dark matter. The bowl is massive, the curvature vast, the scale unimaginable, and the dark tide moves along it with elegant simplicity. The deeper the solar system descends, the softer the turbulence becomes. The streams vanish, the bands smooth, the debris of ancient interactions fades out. Even the primordial oscillation begins to blend into the larger structure. This is the quiet heart of the dark sea, not the center of the halo, but the region where all its motions begin to unify into one slow, global drift, a drift that spans tens of thousands of light years. The invisible ripple shifts into this drift with instant obedience. Its shape becomes cleaner, straighter, more aligned with the massive arc beneath. It behaves now not as a wake, not as a filament, but almost as a contour line, the faint outline of the gravitational landscape the solar system is traversing. For a moment, imagine this landscape, not as terrain of rock or ice or mountains, but as a terrain of gravity, wide, smooth depressions, gentle slopes, long valleys carved by mass that leaves no light behind. The solar system glides along one of these slopes now. Nothing physical changes. Earth still orbits the Sunday. The sun still drifts silently through the galaxy. Every instrument we have sees unchanged skies. But the dark sea sees everything, and the deep tide, which once merely thickened and thinned, now shifts its direction. A slow, inward bend. A change in orientation so broad that it takes thousands of years to notice, millions to trace, tens of millions to complete. Yet the invisible ripple responds in real time. It tightens against one side of the solar system's drift. Its curvature steepens. It begins to wrap, just a little, around the path ahead. The ripple is no longer simply indicating motion. It is revealing something, a slope, a descent, a transition from the outer architecture of the halo into the deep basin of the inner region. If the halo were an ocean, the solar system is approaching the continental shelf, not the place where land rises, but where the seafloor descends into the abyss. This abyss is the central gravitational well of the Milky Way's dark halo, the basin that has shaped the galaxy's rotation, anchored the spiral arms, and held the galactic disk together since its birth. You are drifting toward the architecture that determined the Milky Way's fate. The dark sea thickens. Its density increases not sharply, not dangerously, but steadily. Gravity deepens gently beneath the solar system as it enters the slope of the inner basin. the invisible ripple narrows again. It compresses along the direction of travel, tracing the deepening curvature. Its long, almost serene wavefront begins leaning into the descent, responding to the gravitational shape like a fine thread pressed against a contour. If gravity were wind, the slope would now be a change in pressure. If gravity were water, the slope would be a deepening channel. If gravity were fabric, the slope would be a fold pulling inward. The descent continues, slowly, silently, with the patience of cosmic time. In this region, the halo becomes more isotropic, more spherical in form. The chaotic debris of the outer halo is long behind. The layered flows of the mid-regions have smoothed. The primordial currents of the deep layer now merge into a unified gravitational descent. Everything moves inward, not toward the galactic center itself, but toward the stable curvature of the inner halo. This curvature is what allows the Milky Way to rotate as it does. Without it, the galaxy's outer regions would fly apart. The spiral arms would unravel. The luminous disk would dissolve. But the inner halo's basin holds everything together. And now, the solar system drifts into its vast, unseen embrace. The invisible ripple begins to form a more rigid shape, not tight, not small, but consistent. Almost like a long, continuous arc that shifts with the slow descent, as though gravity itself is smoothing out the differences in motion. This consistency gives the ripple a new property. It becomes predictive rather than reactive. It no longer simply responds to currents, it anticipates them. Its shifting begins earlier. Its curvature adjusts before the flow fully changes, as though the deep tide ahead is strong enough, stable enough, old enough that its pattern can be traced across large scales. In this region, the halo behaves like a single entity, not a collection of smaller structures. The dark sea communicates not in scattered ripples, but in unified motion, a grand, slow tide that whispers the shape of the basin into every drifting particle. And this slow tide carries another secret. At the very bottom of the basin, far too deep for the solar system to reach, now lies a region of even greater density. Not dense like normal matter, not dense like a star, but denser than the halo around it. A central cushion of dark matter. The simulations predict such regions. The mathematics supports them. Reality, though unseen, almost requires them. This central cushion stabilized the early Milky Way. It anchored the first stars. It kept the young galaxy from tearing itself apart, while mergers reshaped its luminous regions. Earth will never approach that center. The sun's orbit keeps the solar system far from the galactic core, far from the densest region of the halo. But the slope we drift through now is the first subtle sign of the basin leading toward it. This descent is the outer expression of a deeper architecture. The invisible ripple knows this. It adjusts again, narrowing slightly, tightening into a shape more aligned with the deep basin's curvature. The sea grows thicker still. The density gradient becomes smoother, heavier, older. Motion grows more unified. Here, everything moves as one. Streams no longer diverge. Currents no longer fight. Oscillations flatten. Even the lingering signatures of ancient collisions begin to fade. The dark sea becomes pure motion, and the solar system is simply part of that motion. Imagine drifting through a region of ocean where all previous turbulence has vanished. The water moves slowly, steadily, all in the same direction. Every ripple aligns. Every eddy disappears. The entire body of water feels as though it is breathing in one long, continuous rhythm. That is the region Earth has entered now. The deep tide strengthens not in force, not in acceleration, but in coherence. The alignment of motion grows perfect enough that the invisible ripple begins to behave almost like a gravitational compass, pointing consistently toward the direction of deeper curvature. It is not pointing toward the galactic center. It is pointing along the slope, pointing toward the heart of the basin, pointing toward the structure that shaped the galaxy. The longer Earth drifts, the clearer the pattern becomes. The halo's deepest architecture reveals itself through the unified flow around the solar system. A pattern so large it cannot be felt in days or years or lifetimes, only in the quiet shaping of cosmic tides. This is the first moment in the entire journey where the darkness feels like a single organism, not conscious, not alive, but unified. As if the halo is recalling its origin, the time when the Milky Way was only a cloud of dark matter, when no stars existed yet, when gravity alone was sculpting the future. The solar system drifts deeper into that memory. And beneath the steady, coherent descent of the basin, something else stirs: a faint irregularity, a subtle deviation, a quiet movement beneath the unified flow. Not a disruption, not turbulence, a deeper current, a current hinting that there is another layer still, one not shaped by primordial tides, or subhalos, or streams, or valley walls. A layer shaped by the galaxy's own motion through the cosmic web. The invisible ripple begins to feel the first hint of that deeper movement, a movement older than the Milky Way, stretching far beyond the halo itself, waiting beneath the basin's smooth descent in the deeper, ancient flow of the universe. A flow the solar system begins leaning toward slowly, quietly, as the dark sea prepares to reveal its next hidden depth, and as the solar system leans into that deeper movement, older than the Milky Way, broader than the halo, softer than any turbulence, something begins to shift beneath the unified descent of the basin. The deep tide, once smooth and coherent, starts to carry hints of an even larger motion. Not disruptive, not chaotic, but vast, slow, patient. A kind of gravitational drift that does not belong solely to the galaxy. The invisible ripple feels it first. Its long, flattened wavefront, once aligned neatly with the inner curvature, begins to tremble in a way too subtle for ordinary motion. Not vibrating, not dividing, but developing a faint secondary rhythm beneath the primary one. Like a second breath, layered under a first. For the first time, the ripple senses a movement that does not flow inward toward the basin's center. It flows sideways, across, through, beyond. This motion does not emerge from the halo itself. It emerges from beyond its edges. To imagine it, you must picture the Milky Way not as an island floating alone in darkness, but as one swirl in a much larger ocean. The halo, enormous as it is only a drop within a larger gravitational sea, the sea of the cosmic web. And the cosmic web is not still. It flows, slowly, quietly, with a kind of inexorable drift that carries galaxies along vast filaments, intergalactic rivers of matter connecting clusters across tens or hundreds of millions of light years. This is the movement now approaching the solar system's path. The deep tide begins to bend in ways it has not bent for millions of years. The invisible ripple tightens, then loosens, then tightens again, as if adjusting to a new gravitational reference frame. A frame that includes not only the Milky Way's dark basin, but the larger flow of the galaxy itself, drifting along a cosmic river. Earth has spent its entire existence inside a dark matter halo that itself is in motion. But that motion, so broad and slow, has always been too large to express itself locally. Until now, the solar system has drifted deep enough into the halo's inner structure that the subtle influence of the intergalactic flow, normally drowned out by local architecture, has begun to imprint its direction into the dark sea around us. The galaxy is moving, not spinning, not rotating, not orbiting internally, moving through space, moving through the cosmic web, moving through a deeper sea. The dark sea within the halo responds to that grand movement very slightly, very slowly. And as the solar system drifts into a region where the halo's basin becomes thinner, broader, more permeable to external influence, that deeper movement begins to seep upward into local structure. It begins to change the geometry of the dark sea around us. Not violently, not noticeably to the senses of worlds or stars, but observably in motion itself. if one can watch the motion long enough. The invisible ripple begins to tilt. A minute rotation enters its long shape, as though the entire gravitational field around the solar system is gently pivoting. This is not the pivot of the valley above, nor the curvature of the basin beneath. It is the slow turn of the Milky Way's own drift through the cosmic filament. Galaxies move through space like leaves caught in a current, too broad to recognize. Their halos are not stationary shells, they are passengers, and the solar system has reached a place in the halo where this driftness leaks inward, shaping the local dark sea. As Earth drifts deeper, the flow around the solar system begins to display a three-part structure. 1. The inner basin's downward curvature. 2. The primordial oscillation layered beneath. 3. The intergalactic drift subtly pulling horizontally across both. The result is complex, not chaotic. Gravity rarely permits chaos on this scale, but intricate. The dark sea begins to twist gently, forming a faint spiral in the flow. Not the spiral of a galaxy too broad, too slow, too stretched, but the spiral of two motions intersecting, inward and across. The invisible ripple tightens, tracing this spiral with a subtle deflection. It is the first time in the entire journey that the ripple no longer reflects local architecture alone. It now reflects architecture from beyond the halo. The solar system is drifting into the region where the galaxy's own motion leaves a faint signature in the flow. To understand the scale, imagine something nearly impossible to feel. The Milky Way is falling toward the Virgo cluster, not diving, but drifting, drawn by the immense gravity of a region called the Great Attractor. That drift is one of the largest motions the galaxy participates in, but it is spread across such enormous distances that no star ever feels it directly. The halo, however, can feel it barely, just enough for its deepest layers to lean. Earth has entered the part of the halo where that lean becomes detectable to anything aligned with motion itself. The invisible ripple is that anything. It curves slightly sideways, not randomly, in a direction aligned with the galaxy's broader drift down one of the cosmic web's faint filaments. The dark sea follows this new direction gradually. It is not a sudden tide, it is a suggestion, a tiny bias in motion, embedded in the fabric of the halo. The deeper the solar system drifts into this region, the more stable this suggestion becomes. The long, unified descent of the basin begins to tilt ever so slightly toward a vector determined by forces far beyond the Milky Way. If the halo is an ocean, the cosmic web is the gravitational moon above it, pulling at its deepest tides. Earth is drifting into the region where that pull is felt. The invisible ripple acts like a compass needle. Its curvature begins to point in two directions at once, downward toward the basin and sideways toward the external drift. This dual orientation creates a slow, graceful spiral in its shape, an overlapping of two tides, a geometry only darkness can express. The dark sea responds. Flow thickens in the direction of the drift. Density bands realign slightly. The deep tide itself begins to reveal the imprint of the larger web. None of this affects the solar system physically. The planets do not wobble. The sun does not shift. Gravity at Earth's surface remains indifferent. But on the scale of motion that shapes galaxies, everything is different now. The halo's deep architecture is no longer isolated. It is part of a larger gravitational choreography, a dance of galaxies moving along invisible rivers of dark matter that weave the universe together. The slope deepens, the drift strengthens, the ripple narrows. The solar system is entering a zone where motions from two scales, the local and the intergalactic, converge into a single gravitational texture. It is like drifting into a deeper part of an ocean, where currents from distant storms subtly touch the water around you. Not enough to lift, not enough to pull, but enough to alter the pattern. The invisible ripple stretches, then tightens. It begins to oscillate on two harmonics simultaneously, the slow undulation of the primordial tide and the even slower shift of the intergalactic drift. This layered oscillation produces something new, a faint beat in the motion, a gravitational rhythm formed by the interference of two cosmic flows. The beat is too long for any creature to hear, too broad for any star to recognize. But the dark sea feels it, and the ripple expresses it. The solar system drifts deeper still. The beat grows clearer. The flow becomes more layered. The basin's descent merges seamlessly with the sideways pull. It is here, in the quiet meeting of these two motions, that the halo reveals a pattern older than the Milky Way itself, a pattern shaped by the cosmic web, a pattern that will guide the next descent of the journey, a pattern waiting in the deeper currents of the dark sea. And as that deeper pattern begins to assert itself, born not from the halo alone, but from the cosmic web stretching far beyond it, the solar system drifts into a region where the dark sea feels layered in a way it has never felt tenderous before. The descent of the basin continues, quiet and steady, but now it is interwoven with the sideward pull of the intergalactic drift, creating a fabric of motion that feels both ancient and new. The invisible ripple, once a simple tracer of local currents, now bends along two gravitational contours at once. It stretches longitudinally with the basin, while a softer torque twists its outer edge toward the cosmic flow. What results is a subtle spiral, wide, faint, deliberate, etched into the dark matter wind surrounding the Sunday into one. This is the first time the ripple behaves in 3 dimensions. It is no longer stretching in one direction or narrowing in one plane. It is folding, tilting, coiling slightly, the way a thin ribbon behaves when two breezes meet at different angles. The dark sea around it mirrors this behavior. The deeper tide moves inward, while the external drift glides across it. Their meeting creates an interference pattern, an enormous, slow-moving geometry of motion. To a human mind, the scale is impossible. To gravity, it is natural. Imagine being suspended in a vast, silent ocean where two undercurrents meet beneath the surface. You do not feel the collision. You feel the blending, a slow, rolling rotation that stretches across all directions. The water is not confused. It is rebalancing. The halo is rebalancing now, and the solar system drifts through the part of that rebalancing where the motions begin to align, not into chaos, but into a new harmony. The descent of the basin becomes shallower. The sideways drift becomes stronger. The invisible ripple tightens, then relaxes, as if testing the stability of this mixed flow. At first, the blending feels like a smoothing, a reduction of turbulence. But beneath the smoothness lies a new kind of complexity, one that emerges only where massive scales overlap. The halo is beginning to reveal not only its shape, but its history. Because the cosmic web is not uniform, not timeless, it shifts, it rearranges. It carries the imprint of ancient collisions between clusters, the gravitational wake of filaments merging, the faint shudder of cosmic flows passing near each other. These ancient, large-scale motions ripple down into the halo with infinite patience. They do not erase local structures, they lean them. And now the solar system enters a region where that lean becomes an imprint, a faint, gravitational echo of the cosmic web's deeper structure. The dark sea grows directional, not sharply, not forcefully, but unmistakably. The invisible ripple elongates toward that direction, the long axis aligning with the broader cosmic flow. The curvature of the basin remains, but it becomes secondary, like the local slope of land beneath the larger gravitational wind guiding an entire landscape. This is the first moment where the halo's internal motion and the universe's external motion synchronize. It is not complete synchronization. It is the beginning. Layers of the dark sea begin shifting in unison, a long inward slide, a longer outward drift, a sideways glide shaped by the cosmic web. 3 tides, 1 motion. The solar system drifts into the region where these tides combine. The combined flow is wide, broad, and patient. It feels less like water and more like the deep drift of time itself, a gravitational slope older than the Milky Way, older than the stars, older even than the halo's birth. To imagine this properly, picture the cosmic web as a vast network of rivers. Galaxies are like drifting boats. Their halos are the hulls pushing through an unseen current. And the basin we traverse so far is the internal contour of the Milky Way's vessel. But beneath that contour lies the direction of the river itself. The solar system has drifted deep enough into the basin that the direction of the cosmic river begins to influence its local flow. The invisible ripple is the first to surrender to that pull. It orients itself delicately, its curvature aligning with the inflow of the cosmic tide. The dark sea follows. Slowly, the density gradient shifts. The long bands of inward motion flatten. The sideways drift strengthens. The entire motion field begins to tilt, not abruptly, but like a slow turning of a massive wheel whose spokes stretch across hundreds of thousands of light years. This tilt does not affect the solar system in any physical sense. The planets do not sway, the sun does not wobble, but the dark sea's gravitational whisper changes tone. If gravity had pitch, the pitch drops, not deeper, but broader, as if the range of motion expands across more dimensions. The solar system drifts along this expanded motion. The deeper tide and the intergalactic flow merge into a unified drift field, a kind of cosmic conveyor, old beyond measure. And yet, beneath that unity, something faint stirs. A deviation, a soft asymmetry, a subtle widening of the gravitational texture, a sign that the dark sea contains not only the influence of the cosmic web, but something else, something quieter, deeper, older. It is not the basin, not the valley, not the primordial oscillation, not the intergalactic drift. This is different. This is the ghost of structure. Deep beneath the coherent motions lies an ancient scar, a gravitational remnant of something that once passed through the Milky Way's halo long ago. Perhaps a massive satellite galaxy, perhaps a dark substructure without stars, perhaps a clump so diffuse it was never detected. Whatever it was, it imprinted a faint, enduring indentation into the halo's deep tide. A broad, flat depression stretching across a region the solar system is now approaching. The dark sea begins to curve subtly around this indentation, not steeply, not disruptively, but clearly. The invisible ripple bends with it. Its shape twists slightly, developing another layer of curvature. We have seen curvature shaped by valley walls, curvature shaped by basin descent, curvature shaped by cosmic drift. But this curvature is shaped by memory. Dark matter remembers even when everything else forgets. This indentation, this ghostly scar, shapes the flow differently from the motions above it. Its gradient is broader, its curve more patient, its pull more ancient. The solar system drifts toward the rim of this scar. The flow tightens again. The ripple elongates further. The density gradient shifts sideways, creating a faint saddle in the dark sea. This saddle is subtle, not a downward slope, not an upward lift, but a shallow gravitational dip spreading across an enormous region. The dark sea responds by forming two slow currents, one moving along the basin, another drifting gently toward the indentation. These currents merge into a pattern unlike any seen so far, a pattern shaped by forgotten structure. The invisible ripple tightens into a balanced shape, as though suspended between two motions. It senses the direction of the cosmic drift above and the ancient indentation below. Motion becomes layered again, but this time with elegance, not turbulence. The dark sea behaves like a three-dimensional mosaic of tides, each tile representing a different epoch of the Milky Way's past. The solar system enters the threshold where these epochs intersect. The gravitational field becomes more complex. The ripple begins to describe a threefold curvature. The dark sea begins to fold inward in new configurations. This is the region where the Milky Way's history is encoded in motion itself. The halo is not a smooth structure. It is a layered archive. Every merger, every tidal event, every collapse, every ancient drift has carved itself into the sea, and Earth is drifting into one of the deepest layers of that archive. The deeper the solar system moves, the more intricate the flow becomes. But the intricacy is calm, like lace woven from currents, not conflict. The invisible ripple folds again, a subtle twist inward, as if tracing the outline of the scar ahead. The dark sea compresses slightly. The density rises. The flow converges. A gravitational hollow opens before the solar system, not a well, not a hole, but a wide depression sculpted by something massive long ago. And Earth drifts into the upper edge of that hollow, not falling, not sinking, just gliding across the rim of an ancient structure embedded in darkness. The halo breathes again, a long, slow exhalation across its deepest layers. And in that exhale, the solar system begins its passage into the next depth of the unseen ocean, guided by the ancient curvature of a structure lost to time. A depth waiting quietly beneath this hollow, ready to reveal the next hidden geometry of the dark sea. And as the solar system glides across the faint rim of that ancient gravitational hollow, this buried imprint of something long vanished, the dark sea shifts again, softer this time, as though adjusting to a memory rather than a mass. The hollow is not a void, it is a fingerprint, a basin carved in the halo by an object that no longer exists in any luminous form. Its stars, if it ever had any, were stripped away billions of years ago. Its gas dissolved, its core darkened. Only the gravity remained, imprinting its legacy into the very architecture of the sea. The invisible ripple feels this memory before anything else. It bends inward, then outward, tracing the gentle saddle-shaped curvature of the hollow. It moves not as if pulled, but as if recognizing something, like a tuning fork ringing faintly when it encounters a sympathetic tone. The hollow widens beneath the solar system's path. Its slope is almost imperceptible on human timescales, but unmistakable in the behavior of motion. The descent becomes softer. The sideways pull becomes smoother. The flow becomes quieter still. This quiet is not emptiness. It is the quiet of depth. The solar system is drifting into a region of the halo where all previous motions, local streams, primordial tides, intergalactic drift, merge into a single, slow gravitational swirl. A swirl so broad it cannot be felt as motion, only as inclination, the sense that everything is beginning to lean in the same direction. This is the halo's mid-depth gyre, not a whirlpool, not a vortex, a gyre, a vast, subtle rotation caused by the Milky Way's own drift through the cosmic web, its internal basin, and ancient scars combined into a single, unified motion. The invisible ripple begins to circle, not tightly, not noticeably to any ordinary sense, but enough that its long wavefront develops the faintest curvature of revolution. The dark sea circles with it. Imagine drifting in the middle of an ocean so calm that you cannot see the rotation of the water beneath you. The horizon stays still. The sky stays still. But if you drop a leaf into the water, it turns ever so slightly, following a movement too broad to sense at once. The solar system is that leaf. The gyre is enormous, stretching across tens of thousands of light years. It is the gravitational echo of the Milky Way's place within the cosmic web, blended with the ancient basin's shape, superimposed upon the forgotten hollows of long-lost structures. In this region, the dark sea becomes layered again, but the layers are not turbulent. They are concentric, circular, soft rotations stacked on top of each other like rings of liquid shadow. The deeper the solar system drifts, the more coordinated these rings become. Their centers align, their flows synchronize, their density gradients settle into wide, sweeping arcs. For the first time, the halo feels less like an ocean and more like a rotating, living tissue. A structure with coherence, with memory, with layers functioning in harmony. And yet, Beneath that harmony lies a quiet distortion, a subtle displacement of the gyre, a tiny offset in its center. This offset grows clearer as the solar system approaches the hollow's midpoint. It is not a mass causing this, not a subhalo, not a clump. It is motion itself, because the hollow, the basin, and the intergalactic drift do not align perfectly. Each pulls in a slightly different direction. Each shifts the center of the gyre by a fraction. Each distorts the rotation by degrees, too small for stars to notice, but large enough for the dark sea to embody. The invisible ripple is caught in this triad of influences. It stretches in one direction, then tilts toward another, then relaxes into a hybrid form shaped by all three. This hybrid form is complex, beautiful, impossible to describe with simple geometry. It is a curvature that comes from three epochs: the early universe, the formation of the Milky Way, the drift of galaxies along the cosmic web. The solar system is passing through their intersection. Here, the dark sea behaves like a woven fabric, threads of motion running at different angles but knotted together into a single, smooth field. The density variations become elongated, forming wide, faint arcs that sweep across enormous regions of space. The invisible ripple begins to mirror those arcs, bending itself into a shape that is neither purely curved nor purely linear, but something in between, a subtle shape stretched thin across a dimension that does not exist for ordinary experience. This shape is the first sign of the deep layer shear. The shear is not turbulence, it is alignment. A region where parts of the dark sea slide past each other in slow, parallel drift, one layer moving slightly ahead of another lagging behind, all guided by the long gravitational pull of the cosmic filament. The halo is beginning to reveal how it participates in the universe's large-scale flow, not through rotation alone, not through descent alone, through shear. The solar system drifts into the outer boundary of this shear. The flow begins to divide again, not violently, not sharply, but gently, like two currents parting around a single drifting object. One current continues inward, another continues sideways. The invisible ripple stretches between them, held taut by two directions of motion. In this region, gravity behaves like a slope combined with a breeze. The slope pulls one way, the breeze nudges another. The result is a slow, diagonal drift, a movement the solar system cannot feel physically, but the dark sea around it expresses intimately. As the drift deepens, small structures within the halo, tiny fluctuations, remnants of microcollapses, begin to behave differently. Instead of aligning with one motion, they align with two. Their trajectories reveal the shear more clearly than the flow itself. These microstructures move like dust caught between two currents, not chaotic, not random, simply layered. The invisible ripple senses the alignment. It straightens, then bends, straightens again, tracing the shear's long slope. Its movement becomes more than a reaction, it becomes participation. The ripple is no longer a byproduct of the dark sea. It is a thread within it. And as the solar system drifts deeper into the shear, a new gravitational texture appears. Beneath the motion, a broad, faint undulation across the entire region. This undulation is not part of the shear. It is not part of the gyre. It is not part of the basin. It is not part of the hollow. It is something deeper. A membrane. A thin, wide gravitational plane that stretches across a vast region of the halo, far broader than any substructure, far smoother than any stream, far older than any merger. This membrane is the boundary between two major flows of the cosmic web. Where they meet, they do not clash. They blend, forming a gravitational plane that guides structure across scales of hundreds of thousands of light years. The solar system is approaching that plane. The dark sea grows thicker, the density gradient becomes wider. The invisible ripple stretches so far it almost flattens. The shear aligns with the membrane. The gyre tilts toward it. The basin descends toward it. The hollow opens into it. Everything points toward this plane. This is not a collision zone, not a boundary wall, not a shock front. It is the quietest seam in the universe, the place where the gravitational fabric of one cosmic river meets another. The solar system is drifting toward that seam now, and the invisible ripple tightens into its thinnest, longest form yet, preparing to brush the surface of the membrane as the dark sea reveals the next hidden layer beneath its vast, silent depth. And as the solar system drifts toward that gravitational membrane, wide, thin, stretched across a region older than the galaxy, everything within the dark sea begins to reorient. The shear flattens, the gyre tilts, the hollow softens, the basin's descent broadens. All motions, all gradients, all textures in the halo begin to lean toward the same plane, as though the dark sea itself is preparing to glide across a boundary that is not a barrier, but a change of depth. The invisible ripple feels this transition before the flow makes it obvious. Its long, thin form begins to flatten even more, until it resembles not a curve or a twist or a spiral, but a delicate thread stretched across a vast gravitational horizon. The ripple is no longer responding to local motion. It is anticipating a change in the very architecture of the sea. The membrane ahead is not solid, not rigid, not an object. It is an alignment, a region where two long-scale cosmic flows meet in such a harmonious angle that gravity forms a subtle, extended plane between them. To imagine it, picture two oceans sliding past one another, each with its own temperature, its own currents, its own depth. Where they touch, there is no wall. Instead, there is a change in character. The water grows smoother, the waves calm. The currents align for a moment before diverging again. The solar system is entering that zone of alignment. It is here, in this quiet seam, that the halo feels less like a structure and more like a fabric, soft, flexible, undulating gently as the cosmic flows beneath it shift. The density becomes uniform again, not because structure has vanished, but because the gravitational pressures of two massive regions of the universe are balancing perfectly. In this balancing, the dark sea becomes eerily calm, not empty, but calm. Imagine floating far beneath the surface of a deep ocean, where all the turbulence has died and only the slow circulation of ancient waters remains. That is the state of this cosmic membrane, a region where disturbances from above and below cancel each other out, leaving the flow serene and deliberate. The invisible ripple stretches into a nearly perfect line, as if brushing across the top of a still pond. Even the subtlest curvature disappears. Motion becomes so smooth that the ripple seems to hover without resistance. The solar system glides into the upper surface of the membrane, and the dark sea changes again. The calm is not permanent. It is the calm before revelation, because the membrane is not simply a boundary, it is a conduit, a passage where gravitational influence from one side begins to bleed into the other. Below the membrane lies a different flow, not opposed to the one above, but shaped differently, carrying a deeper history. Its motion is slower, so slow that the gyre above seems restless by comparison. This deeper flow is the root tide of the halo. The solar system is now close enough to feel its presence. The dark sea responds before the solar system even reaches it. The density gradient begins to deepen. The plane of motion begins to tilt downward. The invisible ripple, flat and stretched, begins to bend at its center, as if gravity is gently taking hold of it with both hands and shaping it into the curvature of the deeper tide. Crossing the membrane is not like falling. It is like exhaling. Everything loosens. Everything settles. Everything descends with the slow grace of something drifting toward a familiar depth. The membrane passes around the solar system silently. No shift in light, no shudder of motion, no hint that anything at all has changed except for the subtle deepening of the gravitational quiet. But beneath that quiet lies a world of motion. The root tide is vast, far broader than the gyre above, far smoother than the basin's curved walls, far older than the hollow left by ancient collisions. It is the motion that predates all the others. This tide was already flowing when the Milky Way was young, already drifting when the halo first formed, already shaping dark matter when the cosmic web was still settling into its earliest filaments. It is the most ancient motion the solar system has encountered. The invisible ripple bends into its shape immediately. It collapses into a longer, simpler curve. No twists, no coils, no multi-directional interference. Just a single, profound arc that describes the gravitational backbone of the halo. The dark sea follows. Currents align. Layers merge. Even the faint signatures of the intergalactic drift become subordinate to this deeper flow. The solar system drifts fully into the root tide. Here, the dark sea is not turbulent, not layered, not complex. It is vast, open, stable. A gravitational plane spanning thousands of light years. It feels like standing on the floor of a cosmic ocean, where everything above is noise and everything beneath is foundation. The root tide is not flat. Nothing shaped by gravity is ever flat, but its curvature is gentle, like a massive, shallow bowl. The solar system glides along its interior wall, carried by motion so slow it can only be expressed across epochs. The invisible ripple stretches into a long, stable arc, finally at ease, finally tracing a motion that has no competing influences, no overlapping structures, no conflicting tides. It is the purest motion the halo contains. Yet even in this purity, there is something unexpected, a faint uplift, a soft pushing from one side, a quiet asymmetry emerging from the far depth of the root tide. The solar system moves closer. The uplift strengthens barely, but enough for the dark sea to express it. This uplift is not turbulence, not a remnant of ancient structure, not interference from cosmic drift. It is something else, something subtle, something delicate. The earliest simulations of dark matter halos predicted it, but no observation has ever confirmed it. A dark tide ridge, a gradual rise in the gravitational floor of the root tide, created by a long, slow redistribution of dark matter from ancient epochs of the halo's formation. Not a mountain, not a wall, just a ridge, soft, shallow, rising over thousands of light years. The solar system is drifting toward its slope. The dark sea begins to change shape again, not violently, not abruptly, but meaningfully. The density increases by a fraction too small for stars to notice. The long arcs of the root tide begin to bow upward. The invisible ripple tightens for the first time in hundreds of millions of years. This ridge is not disruptive, but it is consequential. It marks a transition in the halo from the broad, ancient plain into a region shaped by the galaxy's earliest evolution. Crossing a ridge in a dark ocean is like stepping across the threshold of an older world. As the solar system drifts closer, the flow aligns into a narrower path, still gentle, still smooth, but more defined. The invisible ripple curves inward, narrowing along the ridge's rise. Something waits beyond this ridge, not an object, not a structure, a deeper layer of the halo's root motion, one shaped by forces the solar system has not yet encountered. With each drifting moment, the ridge grows nearer, the flow bends closer, and the dark sea prepares to reveal what lies beyond this. Gravitational rise in the oldest waters of the unseen ocean. And as the solar system draws nearer to the rising contour of the dark tide ridge, the dark sea begins to lift in a way that is almost imperceptible, yet utterly unavoidable. The slope is vast, so shallow that no single moment reveals its incline, yet so constant that the invisible ripple cannot help but bend along it. The motion is not upward in the physical sense, it is upward in gravitational depth, as though the floor of the unseen ocean has begun to arch beneath the drifting system. The ridge is not shaped by matter in the ordinary way. It is shaped by history, long before the Milky Way settled into the form we recognize, before spiral arms, before star clusters, before the galactic bar ever existed, dark matter collapsed into a series of early structures that formed the skeleton of the galaxy to be. Some survived, many dissolved. But the gravitational echoes of those early foundations never vanished. The ridge is one of those echoes. The dark sea thickens slightly around it, not with pressure, not with mass that can be touched, but with gradient. Gravity does not need density to create slope. It needs only memory. And the memory of ancient collapse is carved deeply into this region of the root tide. The invisible ripple begins climbing the ridge in its own manner, stretching forward, narrowing slightly at the sides, as if feeling the pull of a deeper architecture beginning to rise beneath it. To imagine this, picture drifting through a deep ocean at night, where the seafloor rises so slowly that you cannot see the slope, only sense it through the faint change in the water's motion. The currents become more coherent, the turbulence dies, the depth grows shallower without ever growing bright. The solar system enters that rising path, and the dark sea changes again. The first sign is the narrowing of motion. Currents that once spread widely across the root tide begin to converge, not inward, but forward toward the crest of the ridge. The convergence is incredibly gentle, more like an invitation than a pull, yet it shapes everything. The second sign is the broadening of the gravitational texture. The deeper the system moves into the ridge, the wider the curvature becomes. It is as though the ridge is not a narrow structure, but a continent-shaped uplift hidden beneath the sea. The third sign is the invisible ripple itself. It no longer simply traces the ridge, it leans into it. Its long arc begins to steepen, not in physical height, but in gravitational fluency. The ripple aligns perfectly with the direction of the ridge, becoming a quiet, elongated impression of the slope itself. The ridge's rise grows more pronounced as the solar system drifts onward. The dark sea responds with increasing coherence. No longer does the flow contain hints of the older, fragmented structures from before. No longer does the intergalactic drift dominate the motion. No longer does the primordial oscillation overshadow the halo's local curvature. All of these motions now blend seamlessly into one unified ascent. It is the most elegant motion the dark sea has revealed so far. But elegance does not mean emptiness. The ridge is layered. The solar system approaches the first of these layers, now a subtle thickening in the density gradient, stretched across a region thousands of light years wide. This layer behaves like the warm thermocline in an ocean, a soft, consistent transition where the deeper chill gives way to a gentler texture. The dark sea becomes warmer in metaphor, not temperature. The motion becomes smoother. The density rises by fractions. The invisible ripple tightens minutely, responding to the increase in coherence. Above this layer lies another, and another. The ridge is not a single rise. It is a stack of ancient gravitational shelves, each left behind by a different era of galactic formation. The solar system drifts across the first shelf. The motion shifts not sharply, but clearly. The flow grows more organized. The shear from the membrane below dissolves, replaced by a more unified drift. Even the faint gyre from earlier chapters grows subtle, almost unnoticeable. Everything feels quieter. Then, the second shelf approaches a region where the dark sea becomes slightly denser again. The invisible ripple narrows further, brushing across this layer like a hand tracing the grain of ancient stone. This shelf has a different texture, slightly more rigid, slightly more directional, as though the gravitational foundation beneath it grew more pronounced in this epoch. The solar system glides across it. The third shelf lies farther still, and its texture reveals a faint asymmetry. One side of the flow thickens more than the other, not significantly, just enough for the ripple to arch slightly off-center. This asymmetry is a relic of the Milky Way's earliest mergers, events so ancient that even their stellar remnants no longer exist. The dark sea remembers. Gravity does not forget, As Earth continues forward, the ridge reveals its deeper structure, a broad sweep in the dark sea, rising with perfect patience, guiding the halo's deepest currents toward a region that has been untouched by chaos for billions of years. The solar system moves into a zone where the shelves merge into a single, unified slope. The dark sea becomes wider, heavier, older. Motion here is cohesive, shaped by processes that have not changed since the galaxy's childhood. This is the midpoint of the ridge. Here, the dark tide feels like something primal, a movement that has existed since soon after the Big Bang, sculpted by the earliest gravitational assemblies, untouched by later epochs of chaos. The invisible ripple responds with a kind of reverence. It elongates into its most perfect form so far, a single, smooth arc with no deviation, no twisting, no interference. Everything around the solar system quiets. Above, the halo's upper layers drift in slow, muted patterns. Below, the deeper tide remains stable, wide, patient. Ahead, the ridge continues its gentle rise toward a crest still far beyond reach. This region feels like a cosmic pause, an extended stillness between two movements, a moment of gravity gathering itself. But the pause is not a stop, it is a preparation. Because beyond the crest of the ridge lies a new architecture, one the solar system has not encountered yet. A region where the halo transitions into the domain of core tides, the deep gravitational patterns shaped not by old mergers or external drift, but by the Milky Way's internal heartbeat. This heartbeat is not literal, it is gravitational. The oscillations caused by the rotation of the galactic bar, the stirrings of the central bulge, the faint echoes of the disk's long-term wobble, the asymmetry of billions of sun masses shaping the dark. These patterns barely reach the outer halo, but they shape the region near the ridge's crest. The solar system continues its ascent. The dark sea grows subtly more directional. The invisible ripple sharpens ever so slightly, tracing the deeper alignment of the core tides. The ridge begins to flatten, not fully, not yet, but enough for the flow to reorganize into a wider pattern. A new motion appears beneath the surface, a soft deepening, a faint curve, a quiet hint of a downward slope, not backward, not downward in the old direction, but into a new axis of the galaxy's gravitational architecture. The solar system is nearing the crest. Beyond it lies the first whisper of the core tide's gravitational resonance, waiting to pull the dark sea into its next hidden depth. And as the solar system approaches the crest of the dark tide ridge, the entire character of motion begins to shift. The rise that once guided the flow upward now begins to level into a wide, ancient gravitational plateau, a region where the dark sea's texture grows thinner, clearer, more transparent to the deeper architecture beneath. The ridge was a memory. The crest is a threshold. The invisible ripple senses this first. Its long arc, stretched taut through the climb, begins to relax not by widening outward, but by becoming more precise. The ripple narrows, sharpens, aligns so closely with the new plane of motion that it appears almost weightless, as though gravity itself has smoothed its path. Crossing the crest is not like crossing a peak. There is no summit, no climax, no arrival. Instead, there is a soft, extended leveling, the gravitational equivalent of walking onto a vast plateau in the dark, with no horizon, no landmarks, only a feeling that the slope beneath your feet has vanished into a perfect, ancient calm. That calm is the beginning of the core tide. The core tide is older than the ridge, older than the hollow, older than the shear, older than the gyre. It is shaped not by external motion, nor by ancient collisions, nor by primordial turbulence. It is shaped by the internal structure of the Milky Way itself, the slow rotation of its luminous bar, the lopsided weight of the bulge, the ancient asymmetries buried deep within its stellar density. These forces barely touch the outer halo. They are too subtle, too slow, too diffuse. But here, just beyond the crest of the ridge, their influence becomes perceptible, not as force, not as acceleration, but as a tone, a gravitational tone, so faint that only motion itself can express it. The invisible ripple bends into that tone immediately. It begins to oscillate, very gently, very slow, across a wavelength measured not in miles or years, but in thousands of light years and eons. This oscillation is not chaotic. It is not a wave. It is resonance gravity, responding to gravity across cosmic time. Imagine drifting across a perfectly still lake at dusk. You do not see the ripples beneath the surface, but if you watch long enough, you notice that the water is moving with a rhythm too large to perceive all at once, a motion that repeats across distances too wide for a single glance. That is the core tide. The solar system enters the outermost edge of it. The dark sea becomes warmer in metaphor, its motion more unified, less fragmented, more directly shaped by the galaxy's luminous heart. Gravity in this region carries a faint directionality, not toward the dense center of the Milky Way directly, but toward the ancient bar of stars rotating there, its slow spin creating a gravitational asymmetry that extends into the halo like a whisper. The invisible ripple tilts toward that whisper, not sharply, barely, but unmistakably to the language of motion. A long, faint torque appears in the flow. The dark sea rotates slightly, not around the halo's center, but around an axis defined by the bar's rotation. This rotation is not fast, not forceful. It is patient. It is evolutionary. It is the galaxy expressing its age. The solar system drifts deeper. The ridge has fully flattened now, its memory dissolving into the vastness behind. The core tide is clearer, stronger, older. The dark sea adopts a new coherence, broad sheets of motion flowing in shallow arcs around the trajectory of the galactic bar. These sheets move like slow, ancient rivers curving around a landform that does not shift. The gravitational pressure becomes smoother. The invisible ripple becomes more refined. Its long axis begins to point, steadily, toward a region far ahead, a region defined not by the basin, nor by the ridge, nor by the cosmic drift, but by the internal heartbeat of the Milky Way. This heartbeat is not literal. It is gravitational, the deep, slow oscillations, caused by hundreds of billions of stars moving in long, stable orbits around the galactic center. The solar system begins to feel the echo of those oscillations through the dark sea. Not physically, not detectably, but motion feels it. Currents begin to pulse with a long, slow regularity, far slower than the primordial oscillations and far deeper than the intergalactic drift. This pulse is the core tide's rhythm. Every galaxy with a rotating bar has one. Every halo shaped by that galaxy contains its whisper. And now, drifting along the crest, the solar system has entered its outermost reach. The ripple sharpens even more. Its curvature becomes geometric, the cleanest, most precise shape it has taken since the journey began. The dark sea begins to display a strange form of symmetry. Not perfect symmetry. Galaxies are too messy for that. But approximate symmetry patterns on one side of the flow that echo patterns on the other, like faint reflections across a shifting surface. This symmetry is the heart's imprint. The solar system drifts into it. Crossing into this region feels like gliding beneath the surface of a massive, unseen structure. A cathedral of gravity, its architecture carved into the halo by billions of years of stellar motion. The dark sea grows quiet. The flow becomes harmonized. The density gradient deepens subtly and uniformly. This is the inner shaping field. Stars never reach this far with their light, but their gravity does. The core tide is the gravitational chorus of every orbit in the luminous galaxy, a summation of motions, a collective shaping, a deep, ancient resonance. As the solar system drifts forward, that resonance gathers, not louder, but clearer. The invisible ripple shifts again, its arc tightening into a long, elegant curve that matches the inner shaping field exactly. Everything becomes aligned. Then something new appears beneath, the flow, a subtle downward bending of the gravitational plane. Barely noticeable at first, but persistent across long stretches of space. This bend is not the ridge collapsing behind. It is not the basin reasserting itself. It is not the cosmic drift pressing upward. It is the first emergence of the core well. The core well is not a pit. It is not a sink. It is not a drop-off. It is a deeper curvature in the dark sea, shaped by the combined mass of the galaxy's central components, the bulge, the bar, the inner halo. This curvature is ancient, stable, and unmistakable once motion aligns with it. The solar system moves closer. The dark sea tilts inward. The invisible ripple bends, narrowing into a shape reminiscent of a long, descending ribbon. The flow responds with clarity, broadening into a coherent drift aligned exactly with the new curvature. Everything begins to angle toward the deeper architecture of the Milky Way's inner halo. The transition is subtle, silent, natural, but it carries with it a profound change in the way motion organizes. The core tide grows more pronounced. The dark sea becomes more unified. The ripple sharpens into a precise, unbroken line of gravitational intent. The solar system is no longer following the chaotic memory of ancient history. It is no longer drifting through the leftover scars of long-lost structures. It is no longer guided by external drift alone. It is entering the region where the galaxy's own shape becomes the dominant sculptor of the dark. This region is not dangerous. It is not violent. It is not intense. It is profound. Because here, in the quiet shaping of the core well, the solar system is entering a new depth of the unseen ocean, a depth where gravity begins to reveal the Milky Way's original design, a depth that leads, slowly, softly, into the next silent curve of the dark sea. And as the solar system eases deeper into the gentle descent of the core well, the dark sea shifts again, subtle, soft, deliberate. The broad shaping field of the galaxy's inner structure begins to tighten into more defined curvature. What had been wide, slow arcs across the halo now coalesce into a single, unified, downward drift. Not steep, not sudden, but unmistakable. The invisible ripple senses this first. Its long, elegant curve begins to narrow, pulled into alignment with the deeper slope. Its sides draw inward. Its spine straightens. Its motion becomes more exact, like a thread stretched taut across a vast gravitational contour. There is no turbulence here, no scars from ancient structures, no interference from drifting streams. Everything feels purified in motion, refined by time, shaped by the stable heart of the Milky Way. The ridge behind dissolves into distance. The hollow becomes irrelevant. The outer basins and cosmic drifts fade into mere background suggestion. What matters now is the well. The core well is not a hole. It is a curvature born from the combined mass of billions of stars, an old geometry carved into the halo by the slow, persistent rotation of the galaxy's luminous center. The dark sea flows along its slopes the way deep water flows over the contours of unseen mountains, smooth, patient, controlled by gravity alone. The solar system is drifting along the upper portion of that slope. Its motion becomes more coherent, shaped by a deeper gravitational blueprint. And as it drifts, the dark sea reveals a quiet symmetry, long, curved planes moving in harmony, as though the halo has entered a region of internal resonance. Imagine walking into a great cathedral carved entirely from darkness. You do not see walls, arches, pillars, but you sense them through the way sound moves, through the stillness of the air, through the weight of space itself. That is the feeling in this part of the dark sea. The invisible ripple glides along the curve as though it finally understands the architecture. Its long form oscillates with a new delicacy, a faint, slow breathing along the ridge of motion, not imposed by outer flows, not shaped by ancient turbulence, but arising from the galaxy's own internal rhythm. The ripple begins to resonate, not vibrate, not quiver. Resonate, aligning with the faint gravitational oscillations produced by the rotation of the galactic bar and the slow breathing of the central bulge. These oscillations are not waves in the ordinary sense. They are shifts in gravitational potential, minute changes spread across thousands of light years, arising from the steady movement of billions of stars. They are the heartbeat of the galaxy, and the solar system is now close enough to feel the first whisper of that heartbeat through the dark. The dark sea responds in layers. The upper layers begin to curve downward, converging into the core well's deeper slope. The mid layers stretch, smoothing themselves into thinner gradients. The lower layers thicken, condensing into longer, broader flows. Everything moves toward unity. The solar system descends further. The slope becomes clearer. Not sharper, just clearer. The dark sea organizes itself with such patience that even change feels like rest. The invisible ripple narrows again. The gravitational field around it becomes more pronounced. The curve begins to rotate slightly, guiding the ripple into a slow, spiraling descent. This spiral is not like those in the outer halo. It is deeper, more controlled, more harmonic. It is the inner halo, expressing the logic of its own formation. Long ago, the Milky Way's luminous core rotated faster and more chaotically. Over billions of years, that chaos settled into pattern. The stars formed a bar. The bar formed a rhythm. And that rhythm carved its signature into the dark sea, a slow, revolving drift that echoes through the inner halo even now. The solar system is drifting into that revolving region. The dark sea begins to twist gently, slowly, a rotation spread across thousands of light years. Not something the solar system can feel as a force, but something that shapes the direction of its drift. The invisible ripple begins to coil in response, a faint spiral along the slope of the core well. Not tight, not accelerated, just inevitable. Motion itself becomes circular. The dark sea curves downward, 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 yet always in a wide, spiraling arc, like water descending a broad funnel carved from silence. This descent is not dangerous. It is not fast. It is not precarious. It is the most stable motion the halo possesses. Everything here is old. Everything here is settled. Everything here moves as one. The gravitational field becomes deeper still. The slope grows more apparent. The direction of drift becomes narrower. The invisible ripple begins to form a new kind of shape, a long, spiraling line that stretches forward and inward simultaneously, describing both the descent and the rotation of the inner halo. In this region, the dark sea gains a subtle luminosity and metaphor, not brightness, but clarity. The solar system passes through that clarity now. The flow strengthens, not in speed, but in direction. The current aligns with deeper gravitational potential. The slope tightens into a cleaner curve. The invisible ripple follows exactly. Everything becomes more certain, more stable, more defined. And within that stability, something new appears. A soft distortion, a faint thickening. Not above, not below, ahead. Something lies further down the well, not an object, not a structure, but a deeper gravitational plateau shaping the flow of the inner halo. The solar system has not reached it yet. It is still far ahead. But the dark sea already feels its influence. The invisible ripple stretches toward it, pulling the solar system's drift in the direction of a new layer of gravitational architecture waiting in the depths of the unseen ocean. A layer older than the bar, older than the bulge, older than any luminous component of the Milky Way, a silence carved into the halo in the earliest epochs of the galaxy's birth. And the solar system moves toward that silence now, guided by the quiet spiral of the inner dark tide. And as the solar system spirals deeper along the slope of the core well, the dark sea begins to reveal a new layer of its structure, one shaped not by the rotation of the bar, nor by the asymmetry of the bulge, nor even by the gravitational memory of early substructures, but by something quieter, deeper, more primordial. The curve beneath the system broadens, becoming less like a funnel and more like a vast, soft basin, an inner plane of the halo, carved by epochs so old they precede the luminous form of the galaxy itself. The invisible ripple feels this before anything else. Its spiral tightens, then slowly opens, adjusting to the widening of the slope. It begins to form a long, low arc, an elegant flattening that suggests the system is leaving the steepest part of the descent and entering a level older than the bar's influence. The dark sea responds with a subtle loosening. Currents stretch, gradients thin. The coherent spiral unwinds into broader, more patient curves. The halo's deep gravity becomes less directive and more foundational, as though the system is drifting into a region where the architecture of the dark sea is defined not by the galaxy's current structure, but by the initial conditions of the halo's birth. This region is the proto-halo plane. Long before the Milky Way had arms, or a bar, or even a disk, its dark matter began collapsing into a loose, sprawling form, an early gravitational scaffold that shaped everything that came after. This scaffold still exists, buried beneath billions of years of evolution, too deep for stars to touch, too stable for mergers to erase. The solar system enters its outskirts now. The plane is not truly flat. Nothing governed by gravity is, but it is smoother than any region the system has passed through. So far, no scars from tidal remnants, no bends from the cosmic drift, no shelves from ancient mergers, no crests like the ridge behind. It is an ancient stillness. The invisible ripple stretches into its longest form, yet a nearly perfect line, with only the faintest downward curve. It moves gently, freely, as if it has found the quietest water in the entire sea. The dark sea grows vast, not denser, but wider. The gravitational texture loses its intricate patterns. What remains is a single, enormous gradient, spread across a region of the halo untouched by later complexity. Drifting here feels like floating at the bottom of a perfectly calm abyss. Motion is clear. Direction is patient. Gravity feels ancient, unhurried, consistent. This is the foundation beneath all other motions. The core well descends gently into this plane, and the solar system follows, sliding along a slope that is almost indistinguishable from straightness. Only the invisible ripple, tuning itself to the faintest changes in depth, reveals that there is still curvature beneath it. The plane is not empty. It is full of motion, but motion so slow, so old, so uniform that it feels like rest. Through this region, the halo expresses its most stable form, dark matter, drifting according to the initial phase space sheet from which the Milky Way was born. The solar system is passing along one of the surviving folds of that sheet. The fold is wide, gentle, ancient beyond memory. It is a relic from the earliest times, when dark matter first began to cluster under gravity's whisper. Those first clusters twisted and folded as the universe expanded and cooled, creating a primordial architecture far deeper than the structures formed by luminous matter. The invisible ripple bends slightly, tracing that fold with delicate precision. There is no turbulence here, no competing flows. The fold is too old, too settled, too patient. The dark sea carries the solar system along its length, effortlessly. But the stillness carries something else with it, a faint irregularity emerging from the far edge of the plane. The first deviation in this ancient layer, the first sign that the proto-halo plane is not perfectly uniform. The irregularity is not dramatic. It is a subtle deepening, a slight inward shift in the gravitational texture, barely perceptible, yet persistent across thousands of light years. The invisible ripple narrows once more, its long shape bending inward by a fraction, revealing the first hint of proto-halo convergence. Convergence happens when ancient gravitational folds overlap places, where two primordial flows met during the earliest collapses, creating regions of slightly increased density that survived every transformation since. The solar system drifts toward one of these ancient convergences. The dark sea thickens subtly. The density gradient deepens. The gravitational plane becomes less uniform. Here, the deep tide begins to curve inward, not toward the modern galactic center, not toward the bar, but toward a primordial gravitational focus, a region shaped before any of those structures existed. The invisible ripple tightens around this new motion. It oscillates faintly, a long, slow pulse across its entire arc, echoing the ancient convergence beneath. The solar system glides into the region where the proto-halo plane begins to fold inward into a shallow, ancient depression hidden deep within the dark sea. This depression is not a structure, not even a remnant. It is a protoform, a region shaped by the earliest density, perturbations that seeded the Milky Way. The fold thickens. The gravitational depth increases by the tiniest margin. The dark sea acquires a subtle inward drift. The invisible ripple bends more noticeably now, aligning itself with the downward pull of the protoform. The solar system begins its descent into this ancient gravitational hollow, a hollow older than every star, older than the disk, older than the spiral arms, older even than the bar's first rotation. Everything that formed inside the Milky Way inherited its motion from this hollow. And now, the solar system returns to its influence. The dark sea grows even more coherent, its gradients tightening, its flow stabilizing around the ancient shape. The invisible ripple becomes more exact, its arc following the hollow's curve with quiet obedience. This is the deepest stability the halo can express. But beneath that stability lies another shape, a faint, almost imperceptible downward pull emerging from below the proto-halo hollow, a deeper hollow, a darker depth, a primordial basin beneath the primordial plane. The solar system moves toward its edge, the dark sea tightening around the ancient fold, the invisible ripple narrowing into a single, elegant line, preparing itself for the next descent, a descent into the most ancient gravitational memory the halo still carries, a depth older than the galaxy, waiting beneath the plane in the silent darkness. And as the solar system glides toward the edge of that deeper, primordial basin, hidden beneath the proto-halo plane, the dark sea shifts into a new form of stillness, one so absolute, so ancient, that it feels less like motion and more like drifting into the memory of gravity itself. The shallow hollow behind stretches into distance, dissolving into the vast calm of the plane. Ahead, the gravitational field grows more directional, narrowing into the first faint contours of a basin older than the galaxy. The invisible ripple senses this change instantly. It does not tighten the way it did in the ridge, nor stretch the way it did across the membrane. It settles. Its long, elegant line lowers, angling downward in a slow, inevitable arc. The ripple follows the slope with quiet surrender, as though gravity has taken hold of it more deeply than ever before. The primordial basin is not dramatic. It is not steep. Its curve spans thousands of light years, barely tilting space, barely shifting motion. But its influence is unmistakable in the language of the dark sea. This is the gravitational foundation upon which the Milky Way was built. Long before baryons, normal matter fell inward to create the luminous core. Long before stars ignited, long before disks spun themselves into spiral arms, long before any visible structure existed at all, there was this basin, the deepest part of the halo's original collapse, the first gravitational decision of the galaxy, the quiet well that gathered the earliest dark matter flows and began shaping the future in silence. The solar system drifts into the outskirts of this basin now. The dark sea thickens, not physically, but in coherence. Gradients that once varied grow smooth. Flows that once carried the noise of ancient events now stabilize. The halo's deepest architecture emerges with clarity. The invisible ripple follows the descent with a kind of reverence. It becomes a single, narrow line, its motion steady and unbroken, a perfect tracer of the primordial gravitational slope. Drifting here feels like moving through the blueprint of the Milky Way. The basin's curvature expresses itself through motion alone, broad, even, ancient. The dark sea no longer swirls, or shears, or lifts. It returns to the shape that existed before the galaxy had shape. Returns to the quiet gravitational field that predated all luminous matter. Here, the halo speaks not of stars or mergers or flows. It speaks of origin. The solar system glides deeper. The slope grows subtly sharper. The dark sea narrows into a long channel, not a tube, not a trench, but a gravitational sweep carved during the earliest collapse. Motion becomes more directional still. The invisible ripple aligns with absolute precision. It is no longer feeling multiple influences, only one, the center of the primordial basin. This is the first time in the entire journey that the dark sea expresses absolute clarity. The flow becomes a single vector. The gradient becomes a single curvature. The ripple becomes a single expression. Everything descends. But the descent is not downward in the visual sense. It is inward, toward the most fundamental layer of the halo, where the earliest dark matter gathers, where the deepest potential was carved, and where the entire galaxy rests in gravitational balance. The basin grows more defined as the system moves along it. Beneath the smoothness lies a faint irregularity, not chaos, not structure, but texture. The earliest collapse was not perfectly symmetric. Nothing in the early universe was. Quantum fluctuations created tiny differences in density, differences that amplified over vast timescales, shaping where dark matter gathered most deeply. The invisible ripple feels these textures. It shivers not with noise, but with recognition. Small bends appear in its length, tiny, delicate curves that trace the ancient irregularities. These bends are the fossils of the galaxy's birth. The dark sea follows their contours with the same softness, the same patience, the same inexorable drift. Here, the halo is no longer telling the story of motion. It is telling the story of formation. The slope steepens, slowly, barely, but enough for the solar system's drift to narrow further, enough for the ripple to tighten again, enough for gravity's ancient architecture to become more pronounced. The basin is drawing the system inward, not because of force, but because of shape. Gravity is shape. Motion is acceptance. The solar system accepts the shape, drifting deeper into the primordial well. The dark sea thickens once more, the coherence rising, the flow stabilizing, all disturbances of later epochs smoothing out. This is the most ancient region of the halo the system has reached. It is the quietest place in the entire journey, the deepest, the most faithful to the early universe. Yet even in this deep silence, something stirs beneath, a fainter depth, a softer pull, a shadow of an even earlier gravitational contour. Not a collapse, not a perturbation, not a structure, a root. The primordial basin itself sits upon an even older layer, a remnant of the initial gravitational landscape formed when the universe was only minutes old. A relic from the epoch when matter first began to gather at all. Before galaxies, before halos, before any coherent structure existed. A basin beneath the basin. The solar system approaches its first hint. The dark sea does not shift dramatically. It does not accelerate. It does not churn. It simply deepens quietly, inevitably. The invisible ripple bends so slightly that only absolute stillness reveals the change. Its arc tilts downward, preparing for another descent. A descent into the halo's oldest surviving gravitational layer. A descent toward a region shaped by the very first flows of matter in the universe. A descent the solar system will glide into with the same slow lightness that has carried it through every hidden depth so far. And just beyond this soft curvature, beyond this first whisper of the root layer, The dark sea waits in an older silence, still a silence carved before stars existed, opening into the next depth of the unseen ocean. And as the solar boat system drifts toward the first faint curvature of the root layer, this older gravitational imprint beneath the primordial basin, the dark sea begins to behave in a way that feels different from every depth before it. Not more turbulent, not less stable, simply older. A kind of age that is not measured in years or epochs, but in the settling of forces that existed when the universe was still soft, with heat and possibility. The slope ahead is barely a slope at all, a soft, endless tilt that spans regions larger than entire clusters. But the invisible ripple feels it instantly, a long, delicate bend across its entire length, as though the dark sea is whispering a shape it has held since the first minutes after creation. The root layer is not a collapse, it is a remnant, a fossil of the universe's earliest gravitational landscape. Before galaxies formed, before halos existed, before matter cooled enough to clump, the universe contained regions of slightly higher density, tiny fluctuations imprinted by quantum noise, amplified during inflation. These fluctuations became the seeds of all cosmic structure. The root layer is one of those seeds, preserved beneath everything that came after. As the solar system glides closer, the dark sea thickens into a smooth, ancient clarity, not heavier, more coherent, as if all the scattered motions of the halo's upper levels are now aligning toward a depth that predates them all. The invisible ripple narrows further, its curve becoming more elegant, its motion more certain. Here, the dark sea is no longer shaped by galactic evolution. It is shaped by the birth conditions of the universe itself. Drifting through this region feels like entering the earliest pages of a story told in gravity rather than light. A story written before stars, before gas clouds, before time had slowed from its furious, expanding youth. The deeper the system moves, the more ancient the gravitational texture becomes. The primordial basin above expressed the collapse of early dark matter. The root layer below expresses something even more foundational, a memory of the universe's first attempt to organize itself. The dark sea reveals that organization as motion. The slope grows quieter, gradients thin into long, pale streaks, not structures, but tendencies. The gravitational field stops feeling architectural and starts feeling like intention, the intention of matter to gather, to become, to shape the future with gravity alone. The invisible ripple bends into this intention as if recognizing an ancestral pattern. There is no oscillation here, no twisting, no spiral, just a long, singular curve, falling into a gravitational idea older than galaxies. The solar system glides deeper. The structure of the dark sea becomes almost featureless, a vast, ancient downward drift, like a thought held by gravity since the first seconds of cosmic existence. But beneath this smooth descent lies something new, a faint thickening at the far edge of the root layer, so small it barely alters the motion, yet so consistent it cannot be noise. The thickening is not a structure, it is not a clump, it is not a remnant, it is a layer, the subroot gradient, the last gravitational imprint left from the era before the halo's formation. This gradient is the deepest stable layer of the Milky Way's dark matter, the region of the halo that never fully relaxed, never fully smoothed, never fully forgot the anisotropies of the early universe. The invisible ripple hesitates, not stopping, not resisting, but tightening as if preparing itself to enter another conceptual depth. The solar system drifts into the first edge of the subroot gradient. The dark sea becomes strange again. Not chaotic, just strange. There is a faint asymmetry here, a quiet deviation in the gravitational slope, as though the early universe left behind a single subtle misalignment that survived billions of years untouched. Motion bends sideways by a margin so small, only the dark sea itself could express it. The ripple follows instantly, its curve adjusting, its length tilting, its entire form shifting into a diagonal descent. This diagonal is ancient. It existed before the Milky Way existed. It shaped how the proto-halo collapsed. It shaped where the primordial basin formed. It shaped everything the galaxy became. The solar system is drifting along that ancient diagonal now. The dark sea grows deeper still, the flow narrowing into a more focused direction, the gravitational field strengthening without force, the entire motion field behaving as though something below is guiding it. That something is not large, not massive, not concentrated. It is simply old, a region of slightly higher dark matter density that served as the earliest gravitational anchor from which the Milky Way condensed. The invisible ripple tightens into a near-perfect line. Its motion becomes singular, precise, almost absolute. The solar system is drifting toward the deepest, stable layer of the halo. The dark sea here feels like the universe's original breath. Soft, long, unbroken. The descent widens. The slope flattens further. A faint gravitational stillness appears beneath the flow. Not emptiness, not calm, but the suggestion of a foundation. The ripple senses it. It lowers gently, as though approaching a floor of gravity so ancient it no longer shifts. This floor is not flat. It is curved by the shape of the early universe, curved by the primordial fluctuations, curved by the dark matter that settled here long before the Milky Way had formed. The solar system moves toward the edge of that floor, the dark sea deepening into perfect continuity, motion smoothing into a single downward drift, the invisible ripple aligning with gravity's first memory just as a new, faint curvature appears underneath, a deeper fold that hints at a final, older layer still hidden, a depth shaped not by the galaxy, not by the halo, not even by its primordial seed, but by the universe's earliest expansion itself, waiting in the last darkness before creation cooled. And as the solar system drifts toward the oldest curvature buried beneath the subroot gradient, motion becomes so slow, so unified, so profoundly ancient, that it no longer feels like drifting at all. It feels like settling, not in destination, not in rest, but in truth, settling into the shape gravity has always held beneath the dark sea, deeper than any tide, older than any basin. The faint fold ahead does not rise or fall. It widens. Its curvature unfurls into a gravitational horizon, a boundary not made of mass, but of origin. The place where the halo's deepest stable layer touches the imprint of the universe's first expansion. The invisible ripple feels it as a soft widening of motion, a release of tension, a lengthening of its graceful arc until it becomes almost straight, not because the slope has vanished, but because the depth has become too large to express in local curvature. This is the foundational field, the gravitational remnant of the universe's earliest structure, the quiet plane upon which all later motion was built. The dark sea becomes enormous here, vast, not in distance, but in coherence. Every current, every gradient, every echo of ancient turbulence, dissolving into a single, unified downward drift. The solar system enters this field as if entering a memory older than the galaxy, older than stars, older than dark matter itself in its present form. For a moment, a cosmic moment, stretched across thousands of light years, the dark sea is perfectly smooth. No hollows, no ridges, no spirals, no shears, no echo of mergers, no turbulence from ancient flows, no hints of the cosmic web's drift, only the foundational descent. The invisible ripple lengthens into a near infinite line, its curvature so shallow it is indistinguishable from stillness. The dark matter wind around the solar system becomes almost without direction, as though gravity has reduced itself to its purest, quietest form. This region is not empty. It is full of the most ancient motion the universe can hold. In the first minutes after the Big Bang, the universe was dense, smooth, expanding with uncompromising speed. When dark matter began to decouple from radiation, it fell into the earliest gravitational potentials, tiny variations in density left by primordial fluctuations. Most of these potentials merged, collapsed, distorted, and evolved into halos, filaments, and clusters. But not all. A small number remained as soft, ancient planes, the gravitational base notes of the cosmos, too shallow to collapse, fully, too persistent to dissolve. The solar system drifts across one of these base notes now. The dark sea becomes almost serene. The flow is not merely smooth, it is continuous, unbroken. A single gravitational idea extended across millions of years of motion. Drifting here feels like moving across the floor of the universe's first architecture, a place where every other structure, every other layer, every other tide is simply an echo of this deeper field. The invisible ripple no longer oscillates. It no longer stretches or tightens. It simply persists, a long, quiet line, carried by gravity's oldest whisper. The solar system glides along this whisper with the same weightlessness that has carried it through every depth, but with a new feeling: finality, not ending, completion. A sense that nothing lies beneath this field except the cosmic origin itself. The gravitational plane continues without disturbance for a vast distance, unchanged by the halo's inner complexity, untouched by the galaxy's luminous evolution. Yet far ahead, so far, the scale becomes abstract. A faint curvature rises again. Not a ridge, not a basin, not a fold. A returning. The foundational field is not infinite. It bends slowly, gently, as though gravity is looping back on itself, closing a shape too large to imagine. The invisible ripple feels the first hint of this return, a soft upward lift along one side, a widening of the other, a faint suggestion that the gravitational floor is not flat after all, but part of a larger curvature encompassing the entire halo. The solar system moves toward that curvature, and in doing so, the journey through the dark sea becomes a circle, not in space, but in understanding. Every depth, every tide, every layer has led to this moment, the realization that the halo is not a nested set of independent structures, but a single, continuous field shaped by time itself. The dark sea is not an ocean, it is an organism, a gravitational system in quiet motion, holding the galaxy in its patient architecture. The solar system drifts along the upward arc, not rising out of the depth, but following the natural curve of the foundational field toward the broader halo. The invisible ripple expands slightly, its line loosening as the slope grows wider. The dark sea stretches outward, its coherence giving way to the first hints of subtle asymmetry, the earliest sign of the layers above returning. The proto-halo plane waits beyond. The basin, the ridge, the membranes, the gyres, the drifting tides, the cosmic flows, all of them lie ahead. All of them remain unchanged. All of them are part of the same continuity. The solar system begins to ascend, slowly, quietly, carried by the upward curve of gravity's oldest architecture. The invisible ripple rises with it, lifting into a long, soft arc. The dark sea breathes a slow exhalation across tens of thousands of light years. And for a moment, it becomes clear that the solar system has not simply traveled downward through layers of unseen structure. It has drifted into the heart of the galaxy's gravitational memory and now follows the quiet return toward the outer sea. The darkness opens, wide and patient, ready to expand again into broader currents, and the solar system follows, carried upward along the gentle curve of the ancient field, toward the next motion waiting in the unseen deep, a motion older than stars, older than halos, older than light, still unfolding softly through the silent ocean of the universe.